We find ourselves in a world that has experienced one of the most serious cataclysms, and we understand that it is now 2035, and we find ourselves on the outskirts of Seoul. At the moment, 5 years have passed since August 17th, 2030, which became a catastrophe for all mankind. From that day on, unidentified monsters began to flow out of mysterious gates, appearing all over the world. These monsters were incredibly diverse, and anyone can draw simple parallels with the invasion of demons into the human world. Since then, humanity has been forced to go through a huge number of changes and hardships. However, at this moment, humanity has hope in the person of the main character of this story named Harvey. A young man hides on the roof of a skyscraper and listens to a radio broadcast in which the announcer asks his colleague why 40% of humanity still survives. This question also interests the main character, but after a few moments he hears suspicious sounds that do not bode well. One of the presenters says that all this is thanks to the walls built from reinforced alloys. His colleague agrees, adding that there is one small catch that many people don't take into account. He states that barriers have their limits and suggests that his comrade take a good look around so as not to build any illusions. In his view, overcrowding in safe zones inevitably leads to shortages of basic supplies. Meanwhile, Harvey counts the number of monsters and realizes that the information matches perfectly with the tip given to him by his friend named Steven. After this, he quickly raises his binoculars to figure out how best to fight these opponents. While scouting, his gaze falls on a small area that once housed a parking space for many people. Harvey braces himself tensely for what's to come, thinking that all this means is that it's going to get really hot in here in just a few moments. His prediction turns out to be absolutely correct, as an energy singularity begins in this parking lot, which attracts the attention of everyone in the area. This singularity quickly begins to form into a mysterious sphere, which in turn opens a small portal. Harvey looks closely at this portal and remembers that such anomalies are called sudden gates, and they periodically appear here and there. As the name of this anomaly says, it behaves extremely unstable, so its energy trace immediately begins to shimmer. Harvey continues to study the situation carefully and notes that he already knows in advance what kind of person will appear from this sudden gate. Just a few seconds after the protagonist says these words, the portal actually begins to distort more than usual, and a warrior emerges from it. This man is found to be clad in heavy armor, which grants him unprecedented protection from physical damage. While moving through space and time, he crossed his arms in front of his face to prevent his eyes from getting burned by the light. A few seconds pass, his metal armor finally cools down from contact with the cold air, and the young man decides to become active. He says that he finally ended up here after long attempts to return to this dimension. The surprised monsters look ahead and carefully study their future victim, who, it seems to them, will not put up any serious resistance. A moment later, they take off and try to put as much distance between themselves and the human warrior as quickly as possible. The young man turns towards the approaching people and wonders what the hell is going on here. Outraged by the harsh fate that most likely awaits him, he asks himself why these creatures are still here. Harvey happily lowers his binoculars and says that, fortunately, this prediction also came true. Meanwhile, one of the giant monsters swings to crush the human warrior. The protagonist watches what is happening and is happy that the battle will finally begin, which means he will get a chance to acquire another power. A truly terrible battle is unfolding in the abandoned quarter, and even some of the toppled houses are starting to crack from it. The skilled warrior, however, received a considerable amount of damage in just a few minutes of being in the fight. He understands that he won't be able to easily confront high-class monsters, and loudly shouts that he decides to use the sword nest skill. Obeying the command of its master, a huge number of energy blades appear in the air, which pose an incredible threat. A moment later, these swords change their position in space to be directed towards the approaching monsters. The warrior, who lost his arm, commands his energy weapon to rush forward at incredible speed. Obeying the will of their creator, the blades cut through the air and prepare to pierce the first target they come across. Harvey notes that it would normally take 10 high-level hunters to take down that many monsters, but this guy did it all on his own in an hour. The giant monster falls to the ground, having received an incredible amount of damage, incompatible with the life of such a creature. Harvey continues to observe and notes that there is only one A-class monster left, which, nevertheless, poses a fairly high danger to all living things. This monster is colored red and has huge horns, which clearly indicates that even the 5 best hunters in the world are unlikely to be able to defeat it so easily. Harvey muses that he has never seen this skill in action before giving credit to the warrior who learned to use it in combat. Meanwhile, the great monster decides to use a ranged attack and opens its mouth, creating a small funnel of dark energy. A warrior who has fought against a huge number of monsters understands that this attack will be extremely difficult for him to survive, even if he gives it his all. Harvey himself finds himself in a rather good mood since the power that this warrior possesses is about to begin to belong to him. Meanwhile, the fearsome warrior jumps upwards thanks to his energy abilities, allowing him to float in the air. Using all the strength he had left, he rushes forward, deciding to use the Phantom Throw skill. In response to this, the monster uses the Demon Blade skill, but a huge number of blows do not reach their target. The giant monster tries to figure out what to do, but it's too late as the skill turns against him. The warrior ends up right behind the monster, causing the demonic blade to rip a hole through his heart and cause him to fall to the ground. The impressed protagonist declares that it was a reckless battle beyond human capabilities. After this, he finds the warrior falling to the ground due to lack of strength, and realizes that the time has come for him to appear in the arena. Coming closer, he reflects on the fact that everything is still going exactly as Steven said. Approaching the exhausted warrior, he places his hand on his body and asks if he's okay, how he feels. He remembers that, according to Steven's stories, he gained this man's power by trying to save him, which means he has such an opportunity. The warrior slowly coughs up blood, realizing that his time is up and he is unlikely to survive. Harvey asks himself if he should help this man, and remembers that he did not specify the details about providing medical care. The warrior slowly comes to his senses, after which he asks the main character what year it is. Harvey replies that he is currently in August 2035, and then tries to understand why he was suddenly asked this. The tired warrior's strength returns briefly, and he successfully climbs up so as not to look so pathetic. He says with irritation that he spent 30 years in a parallel dimension, but only 5 years have passed in the real world. Harvey tries to calm his temporary comrade, telling him that he shouldn't make any unnecessary movements and just rest. The warrior says that it is too late, and Harvey mentally agrees with him, noting that this man will die today. The warrior says that things would have turned out differently if he had not spent most of his energy opening the gate, noting that life has a rather nasty sense of humor. Harvey looks at his interlocutor with regret, trying to understand what happened to him and why he is so depressed. Without thinking twice, the warrior turns to Harvey and asks him to find his family. With these words, he hands him a photograph of his relatives, after which he asks him to take care of them. Harvey hesitantly accepts the photo and says that he is not in a position to care for anyone else right now. The warrior states that he is not asking for this for free, offering to give up his power in exchange, to which Harvey responds with feigned surprise. The warrior states that he needs to know the name of his interlocutor in order to transfer his power to him. Harvey understands that in this world, battered by disasters similar to the apocalypse, it is necessary to seize absolutely any opportunity. The warrior introduces himself as Roger, and then asks the main character's name again. Harvey briefly delves into the past, during which he was betrayed by his comrades and left in a very unenviable position. One of his opponents came closer to him and announced that they had finally met him. This event took place in 2058, when he was unexpectedly discovered in his own hideout and quickly defeated. His opponent said that he should not try to escape from here because he would not succeed. Harvey clearly understood that the wounds he had received would hardly allow him to move even one step. These wounds were inflicted by brutal blows that instantly destroyed almost all the life energy in his body. Harvey looked up and asked his tormentors who had given away his location and betrayed him. Harvey's opponent claimed that it was a 16th rank villain named Scott, who made a deal with them and leaked his data for $1 million. Harvey called Scott a pathetic bastard and then declared that he would definitely take revenge on him. He was forced to take this path by the deaths of his parents, false accusations, prison, disaster, and the deaths of his relatives, but none of this matters now. Harvey's opponents began to say that it was time for him to die and that he should think about his last words, but he did not agree with this. Somehow, he found a way to turn his life back and decided to show it to his opponents as a final act. The Warriors of Light looked in surprise at the small stone that Harvey had been clutching in his hand all this time, and noted that it looked completely unremarkable. Harvey stated that this is the artifact that has been rumored, adding that it is called the Reversal Stone and has the ability to turn back time. The heroes, who are aware of this artifact, look at it in surprise, not believing that such a great artifact looks so inconspicuous. To prevent Harvey from using it, they rush forward, but it is too late as a glow begins to emanate from the protagonist's body. Harvey says goodbye to his opponent named Jonathan Curtis and says with a grin that they will see each other in the past. Dissolving into a time anomaly, he hopes to be thrown into the time before the disaster, or at least into the times when his brother and sister are alive. This is how he ended up in this place. thereby providing himself with another chance to live a decent life. Harvey spent 23 years returning here, thus entering the world of the past. Looking at his interlocutor, he extends his hand to him and clearly states his name in order to receive unimaginable power. The main character finds himself in a world that is on the verge of collapse, devastation, and monster attacks. However, life must go on, and this time he should be able to protect himself and his loved ones. Roger loudly shouts that he wants to activate the system transfer process, stating that the target should be a man named Harvey. A few moments pass, and the asphalt near them begins to shake intensely. The system asks Roger if he agrees to continue this procedure, adding that upon its completion the carrier will die, to which he replies that he agrees. The system states that user Roger has lost the transfer by the system, and a new user named Harvey has been registered. In a moment, the boy's body is filled with incredible power, and all the abilities that Roger possessed are transferred to the new owner. The system also states that it has decided to create a second original of the system and transfer the ability of the Master of Copies. The main character's body gradually begins to glow, but this effect quickly fades away. Harvey looks around and finds that he is surrounded by nothing but lifeless high-rise buildings with no signs of activity or monsters. The system states that the scan of user Harvey's body has been completed and notes that the transfer procedure is 20% complete. He also reports that the transfer has begun, but if he is not careful, the procedure could very easily be cancelled. Harvey asks his comrade what he meant by that, completely unaware that the huge monster behind him is rising to its feet. However, after a few seconds, a terrible and loud stomping reaches his ears, and he realizes that he is in big trouble. Roger chuckles and says that life really is a complicated thing, while Harvey takes action. The giant monster, although seriously damaged, still acts as if it had just emerged from a portal. Roger sadly states that people only go home and live happily ever after in science fiction novels. Without thinking twice, he turns to the protagonist and recommends that he forget about transferring power and just run away while it is not too late. He also says that it's all quite sad, but he has no other choice. Finally, he states that if life is full of crap, then you have to live with this crap, and the only way to survive is adaptation. Harvey doesn't give in to these words and quickly takes the metal pipe, which causes genuine surprise to the skilled warrior. Roger asks Harvey if he understands what he is doing, to which he replies that he is perfectly aware of his actions. He then looks up at the approaching demon and states that he has been running his entire life, but now everything must change. The monster takes a few more steps towards Harvey, but his resolve remains absolutely unwavering, even in the face of such a superior opponent. For some unknown reason, the monster suddenly turns to the side and walks away, as if completely losing interest in the two fighters. Harvey lets go of the improvised weapon and admits that he felt like he was going to die from the strain. Roger says they were very lucky, but Harvey says it was all thanks to his efforts during an unequal fight. From Harvey's point of view, even if the monster wasn't critically injured, it would still risk attacking them without fear of any consequences. Immediately after this, he discovers that irreversible changes are beginning to occur with Roger's body. But the warrior says that he must find his family and take care of them. After this, he points his finger at him and says that if he breaks his promise, he will not forgive him even after death. The system states that the transfer procedure was 100% complete, but a decision was made that the user's body was not suitable for receiving the system. Immediately after this, the system makes a decision to rebuild the host's body through awakening. After a moment, she issues a warning that the awakening procedure may involve some pain, and within seconds, Harvey is in incredible pain. Attacks of this wild pain can be described as well-aimed shots from a large-caliber weapon straight into the body. Harvey tries to hold on, but the pain quickly reaches levels he couldn't even imagine. He admits that he feels as if his bones are breaking one by one and his flesh is falling apart. This process could also be compared to burning alive, but Harvey becomes so painful that he even loses the strength to scream. After some time, morning comes, and another person appears in this place who decided to try his luck. He calmly drives through the ruins in his car and sings songs in order to maintain his psyche in a more or less healthy state. After a while, he sees the main character in front of him and slows down a little, definitely not expecting to see him here. Harvey decided not to waste any time and properly fastened the stolen goods to his pickup truck so that they would not fall out while driving. A moment later, he hears the sounds of an approaching car and turns around to find out who decided to come here at such a time. The man turns out to be an acquaintance of Harvey's named Henry, so he greets him quite politely, asking him what he is doing there. Indro says that Harvey was supposed to have the day off today because he asked to switch shifts, which is the reason he was here. Harvey talks about how he was going to go back, but a monster appeared on his way and he ended up stuck in this place. He then states that he missed his chance to leave and ended up spending the entire night here, to which Henry emotionally states that Harvey is acting like he is tired of living. Harvey tries to calm his friend down by telling him that thanks to his decision, he hit a pretty big jackpot. He also asks Henry why he came here at this hour, noting that the rest of the team is still nowhere to be seen. Indro tries to avoid answering this question, adding that lately he has been waking up very early, and that is why he decided to come here. Harvey smiles and says that now everything has become clearer to him, thinking that in fact this is a lie, and he is probably hiding something useful. Indro decides to share a little story, telling about what one of his colleagues said. Meanwhile, Harvey remembers about Steven, who was the leader of the Hyena team, the original owner of the Spearmaster ability, which he stole today. However, he was unable to use it properly, and because of this, he gradually became an outcast among the other Awakened until he was found dead in an abandoned building. The reason for this man's downfall was extremely simple, but to the uninitiated, it all looked like some kind of mystery. In fact, this man revealed his copying ability during his registration as an Awakened one, and he quickly made enemies. Absolutely no one would want to tolerate that their remaining skills would be so easily copied at the first opportunity. Harvey himself slowly drives about his business and turns his gaze to his seat, on which lies the valuable loot. This loot consists of 3 B-class crystals and 4 C-class crystals. He reflects that, of course, he feels a little ashamed in front of Steven for stealing them, but he risked his life for them. He also understands that now he only has to figure out how to dispose of them, because even if he sells them, he will be able to comfortably retire, but now he cannot do this. Recalling one of the stories told by his friend Steven, he also recalls that after awakening with Roger's power, his friend was incredibly shocked. According to him, he was so discouraged that he didn't even get to the valuable trophies. However, as soon as he came to his senses and returned the next day to collect the trophies, they had already disappeared. Every time Steven thought about that moment, he regretted not having taken care of the trophies. This is why Harvey had been planning for some time to collect all the possible crystals that ended up in the area after the destruction of the monsters. The loot turned out to be quite substantial, and thanks to it, the main character had the opportunity to significantly upgrade his skills. Harvey understands that if these were the cores of ordinary monsters, they could be sold discreetly. But if he puts such high-grade crystals up for sale, it will cause problems. These problems will be of keen interest to the Awakened Association and the government, who will demand an explanation of the reasons for the appearance of such treasures. At best, Harvey would not even be able to get their full value and could be forced to sell them for pennies or even end up in the government's crosshairs, not wanting to end up like his future friend, who will now be dragged out to an unknown fate. Harvey decides that there is only one right way to deal with this situation. From his point of view, in order to solve this problem, he should register as an Awakened one as soon as possible. Having reached his interlocutor, he hears from him a question about what they owe to such a busy man. Harvey greets his friend Danny and tells him that he finally got some cash, so he decided to have a drink with his friend. Danny says he wouldn't mind grabbing a bite to eat with his friend, but Harvey says he has to earn the freebie. After some time, the scene moves to the safe zone of Seoul, where all the civilized life of South Korea is concentrated. Harvey stops at a humble merchant's place and asks him how much money he's offering for his loot. The merchant says that this time the items are very useful, and he is ready to give 600 for everything, after which Harvey asks to give a little more, since now it is quite difficult to find something worthwhile. The merchant says that previously you could get as much as 800 for something like this, but now it's hard to do that, since the number of people looking for expensive goods has sharply decreased. Harvey looks at his interlocutor with regret and realizes that he will have to come up with another way to make money. The merchant goes on to explain the reasons for this pricing, stating that the population is decreasing and prices are rising because people are simply not spending money. After some time, a boy and a girl who are his younger brothers run up to him. They immediately hug him and start complaining, saying that they already thought he had abandoned them since he returned so late. Harvey quickly turns towards his brother and sister and looks at them carefully. After a while, he calms them down and then asks them one very important question that makes them freeze in their tracks. Harvey immediately tells his siblings that they should be at school and not wandering the streets waiting for him to return. The merchant scolds Harvey and says that he shouldn't scold them for coming here because they were worried about him not returning all night. The merchant also advises Harvey to be more responsible and think carefully about what will happen to these children if he does not return one day. Harvey asks his brother and sister why they are crying so much. The children immediately wipe away their tears and say that he just imagined it, but the older brother invites them to go to his house to fry some meat. The children immediately calm down completely and say that they are very happy to hear such news, adding that they also really love meat. Harvey's younger sister says she wanted to tell him something very important. She adds that the grandmother owner asked him to look in on her as soon as he returns, and Harvey realizes that he has one more thing to do. Harvey asks them the reason for the visit, to which she replies that her grandmother asked her to tell her that the rent was overdue. Harvey returns home with a heavy head, realizing that he now faces an extremely unpleasant conversation with the owner of the apartment. Having made the necessary purchases at the grocery store, he comes to his grandmother's apartment, which is on the 6th floor. As an apology and an attempt to appease the owner of the apartment, Harvey brought a fairly large quantity of meat delicacies. The grandson of the grandmother, who is the owner of Harvey's apartment, was also invited to take part in this tempting meal. Grandma slowly waves away the food and asks him why he brought so much. Harvey replies that he went into the butcher's shop to buy some meat and thought about her. The grandmother states that such concern is unnecessary, since it would be better if he stored food only for the children. Harvey apologizes for the late rent and hands her an envelope of money to pay for the shelter. The grandmother states that she has noticed how hard Harvey's life is lately, adding that this is not right. Harvey looks at the owner of the apartment in surprise and declares that there is no need for this, and he will cope with what he already has. However, Grandma says that in difficult times, all people should help each other, so Harvey should not be shy and just agree to her help. The grandmother immediately hits her grandson on the head with a spoon, saying that this is not his house, so he should not be the boss. The young man asks her if she really uses a spoon to crack skulls, adding that after her death the house will be his anyway. Grandma immediately says that he shouldn't have said that, reminding him that because of him her stomach turned upside down and she can't sleep at night. She also begins to scold him for not studying, but running around here and there, doing nonsense called porter. Granny asks him what made it work, to which he replies that he is studying how hunters fight in case he suddenly becomes awakened. He also talks about how it is now the time of the awakened and the age of the hunters, noting that the grandmother has no idea how this world works. The grandmother begins to lament and turns to Harvey to reason with her grandson. She also states that he is the only family she has left. However, he is still quite immature. While on the balcony, Harvey receives a call from his friend Danny, who tells him that he spoke with the team captain, who invites him for an interview. Harvey happily says that he is very happy to hear this information, but Danny immediately informs him that it will not be free. He states that instead of a down payment, Harvey must prove himself at the highest level, as he could then be added to the permanent roster of the team in a supporting role. Danny says he is surprised to hear such enthusiasm in his friend's voice, noting that he had not previously shown any interest in being a porter. Harvey decides not to reveal the real reason for his decisions and says that working in this city is becoming more and more difficult, so he decided to look for other options. Danny says that they leave tomorrow at around 8 a.m., so he must be at gate 7, and then hangs up. Harvey looks around and reflects that so far everything is going according to the plan that he carefully prepared. The next day, he arrives at the gate where he expects to meet the other team members. Harvey is thinking that today he should copy the tank's skill and head straight to the association in order to carve out a place for himself in the sun. Danny arrives on the scene, looking at his comrade with a smile, saying that today he arrived earlier than ever. Harvey greets his friend, then muses about registering as a tank and getting basic gear. Meanwhile, Danny turns to another player who just happens to have the right class and states that this is the person they were talking about yesterday. The tank class player says that he is the captain of a team named Stanford, and then states that since he is older, he can call Harvey you. Harvey says that if Danny calls him his elder, then this automatically applies to him as well, after which he expresses hope for fruitful cooperation. Stanford shakes his new friend's hand in a friendly manner, saying that the feelings are mutual, thereby giving him a copy of his abilities. Harvey eagerly awaits the system notification to find out what ability he copied. The system shows him 3 tank class skills, the first of which is Iron Skin, which increases defense and absorbs damage. The second unique skill, called Strike, allows you to hit the enemy with the shield, attracting their attention and increasing the aggression factor by 95%. The last skill copied is the Pressure skill, which releases a powerful aura, intimidating enemies and attracting their attention. Harvey finds his eyes beginning to sparkle with the sheer variety of choices the system has to offer him. The system also adds that copied skills can now be viewed in a special menu that has just been created. Harvey reflects on the fact that his mission is now complete, and he has finally acquired the skills he needs to make it easier for him to survive. Meanwhile, Stanford looks with surprise at the rather strangely behaving youth, nevertheless continuing to squeeze his hand. The awkward silence is broken by Danny, who asks Harvey if he is okay. Harvey looks back at his friend in surprise, and his friend tells him that he has a very strange grin when he shakes hands. Stanford says that the guy has a pretty strong grip, not forgetting to express his satisfaction with the physical form of his new comrade. Harvey removes his hand and apologizes to his friend for acting rather strangely, to which the latter replies that such an incident is not worth unnecessary attention. Immediately after this, he points to the truck, saying that he can climb right up there. Harvey takes a closer look at his new team, first noticing two young men chatting among themselves about something unrelated. Immediately after this, he sees a man and a girl who, judging by their appearance and equipment, are archers specializing in long-range combat. Finally, Harvey notices two more fighters, whose purpose at first seems rather unclear to him. Stanford suggests that before heading out to the hunting grounds, Harvey should greet his team members and get to know them a little. Harvey muses that once he starts copying the skills of higher-ranked awakened ones, the skills he took from those people will be useless. However, he decides that it is a rather useful temporary boost, even if he removes the skills he gained from these people. After meeting his comrades, he climbs into a truck, which immediately sets off for the hunting grounds. Harvey reflected that he had already managed to copy 13 skills during the trip. The first thing he did was copy 3 skills that belonged to the healer class into his arsenal. This specialization was possessed by one of the girls, who was currently chewing gum and carefully studying something on her smartphone. Immediately after that, he turned his gaze and thought that, among other things, he had copied 1 cartographer skill and 2 other skills. He also noted that he copied several attacking skills that made him an absolutely versatile fighter. Harvey thought about the incredible possibilities this ability opened up for him, but he knew that even that was not the limit. He smiled and thought about how he could now perform the roles of tank, attacker, healer, cartographer, and catcher. Such versatility, in his opinion, was something unprecedented, since no person without the ability to copy skills could achieve this. After some time, the squad arrived in abandoned areas of the city, which were teeming with dangerous mutant monsters. The latter did not keep us waiting long and quickly emerged from their shelters to attack the vehicles. After getting out of the car, Stanford rushed forward and performed an attack maneuver to delay the relatively weak opponents. He also turned to an archer named Christopher, telling him to make a long-range attack. Christopher immediately jumped up, replying that he understood the order and would now take the necessary position to fire. This action took him little more than a few seconds, and he was already preparing to fire. The first shot was immediately followed by several more, and the victim lost a huge amount of health. Stanford continued to give instructions to his squad, this time asking the second archer, Lily, to perform the finishing move. The girl carefully took aim at her target and, noting that the commander's order had been accepted, began to prepare to carry it out. She calculated the wind speed and tension force, after which she released the arrow with maximum precision, sending it into a rapid flight. This arrow had incredible killing power and immediately tore off a huge chunk from the head of the unsuspecting mutant. Stanford praised the archer, saying that she had done a great job and reminded her that there were only 2 mutants left. Harvey was thinking about how he had nothing better to do and suggested that maybe he should activate some skill for fun. However, after weighing this decision, he decided to abandon it, realizing that after activation he would not be able to change roles for another 24 hours. Some more time passed, and a considerable number of monsters in the area were destroyed thanks to the coordinated actions of an experienced squad. Stanford happily reported another day without incident and praised his team's work. Looking at Harvey, he noted that his stamina was at a very high level, adding that they had an unusually high number of trophies today compared to other days. After a while, he turned his gaze to the other porter, who had been trying to follow them all this time. Unlike Harvey, this man did not have developed physical abilities, so every step was given to him with great difficulty. Danny noted that the guy was quite famous for his fists in school, a reference to Harvey. Stanford turned to his interlocutor and asked if he meant the time before the disaster. Danny replied that he had a keen sense for such people, noting that Harvey had not even formally trained, but still surpassed the athletes. Stanford took a closer look at Harvey and noted that he didn't look much like a bully. He added that calling the man a bully would be an overstatement, since bullies were afraid of him, and Harvey himself dreamed of becoming a detective. Having completed his mission, Stanford declared that everyone had done a very good job and handed the protagonist an envelope with money. Harvey started to refuse, saying that he couldn't accept payment for such work, but Stanford insisted that he just take it and say thank you. Stanford also noted that it would have been tough for any newcomer and asked if Harvey had considered continuing to work with them. He hinted that he could help him find a job, to which Harvey promised to think about the offer. After this, the warrior in heavy armor turned around and, waving his hand in farewell, said that they would definitely meet if the opportunity arose. Danny asked his friend if he wanted to treat him as promised, to which he replied that he had other plans at the moment. Harvey's friend asked him what these plans were, but Harvey said that he could not let him in on all of his affairs. Without thinking twice, he went to the Seoul branch of the Awakened Association to finally register. After a while, he found a sign indicating that there was a stand there that was only for tanks. Realizing that this was where he needed to be, Harvey walked up to the bored girl, who looked at him in surprise. After a while, she asked what he had just said, and Harvey repeated that he had come to register as an awakened one. The girl explained that this stand was intended only for registering tanks, and asked if he was sure that he had woken up in this role. Harvey assured her that his premonition could not have deceived him, since he woke up as a tank today. The girl looked closely at the main character, trying to understand whether the young man, who could believe in himself too much, was deceiving her. Harvey looked at her calmly and asked if something bad had happened. The girl replied that everything was fine and added that he was the first person to awaken as a tank in the last 6 months. After that, she congratulated him and asked if he had brought his ID, to which she received an affirmative answer. Without thinking twice, he takes out a special document from his pocket, which looks just like an official ID, and hands it to the girl. The branch worker takes the documents and recommends that Harvey sit down on a bench to wait a bit. The protagonist follows her advice and immediately sits down on the bench, immersed in his own heavy thoughts. He understands that he will have a hard time in this world because when he first opened his eyes, he thought he was sleeping. However, everything that happened turned out to be not a dream, but a real, cruel reality in which he will now have to survive. He also remembers the times when he was in prison and how his brother and sister would come to visit him to at least cheer him up a little. He also recalls the incredible grief that crushed his heart the moment he learned that they had died in a car accident. The death of his brother and sister became the decisive episode in his decision to become a villain and take the path of crime. However, as soon as he returned and saw his relatives alive, he experienced an immeasurable amount of joy. This joy was so fantastic that at first it sincerely seemed to him that he was in his own dream. Without thinking twice, he returns to reality and reflects on the fact that now he will not lose his loved ones under any circumstances. He also confidently states that he will definitely protect them from any danger that may appear on the horizon. To adjust his action plans, he quickly calls up the system window. Studying the reports, he realizes that stamina is ranked from 6,000 to 15,000, and strength is randomly assigned between 2,000 and 5,000. He also realizes that his numbers are at their peak for a first awakening, which is a pretty good start. The system notifies the protagonist that it has begun the process of forming a core, which confuses him. He realizes that he does not remember his friend mentioning such procedures and decides to wait until this procedure is completed. After some time, a branch employee who accepted the protagonist's ID appears from the corridor. She calls him by name to get his attention and get him to his feet. Without thinking twice, she hands him the ID, telling him that he can take it and not worry about anything. She also reports that his identity check has been completed and no violations have been found. Immediately after this, she points him to a research assistant and asks him to follow this person to undergo a full test. The employee introduces himself as Boris, adding that he is very pleased to meet you. Harvey extends his hand to the research assistant, saying that it is very nice to meet him too. They shake hands as a sign of good intentions, after which they decide to get down to business. Boris says that everything has already been prepared in advance, so testing can begin right now, so as not to waste time. Immediately after this, they go into the elevator to go up to the desired floor. Harvey muses that the employee is not awakened, so copying his abilities is impossible. He also notes that his initial assumptions were that the person would have to be awakened if he was working for the association. But it turns out that there are also unawakened personnel working there. This circumstance seems a little surprising to him, but he decides to just go with the flow and complete the test. After a while, he lies down on a chair and has a large number of wires connected to him, while Boris states that the test consists of 3 stages. The researcher notes that at the first stage, the strength and endurance of the subject are measured in order to determine his physical parameters. After a few seconds, he informs you that the preparations are completely finished and the measurement process can begin. Harvey lies quietly in the chair while the scientific equipment does its work, without moving or straining. Boris says the test will take about 10 minutes, so Harvey can relax. Once the first stage is over, Boris reveals that the second stage requires the use of an active, unique skill called Lucky Tom. A small goblin figurine appears in front of Harvey, serving as a dummy to test the skills of the awakened. All this time, the main character is closely monitored by scientific staff in order to track his actions. Boris says that they will also measure aggression levels, adding that Harvey simply needs to use his skill on the dummy in front of him. Harvey raises his shield and takes aim, preparing to strike. Boris clarifies that it doesn't matter at all which part of the dummy he hits, and suggests not to be shy about hitting anywhere. Harvey takes this information into account and then delivers a powerful blow directly to the goblin's ear. The results of the damage the dummy sustained are so phenomenal that Boris and his colleague gape in amazement. After a while, the testing comes to an end, and Boris comes out to Harvey to buy him coffee. A freshly brewed strong drink pleasantly smokes in a bright white mug. Scientists say that due to problems with the selection of evaluators, the third stage of testing will take place in a few days. Harvey asks Boris if training is complete for the day, and he replies that the tests are completely finished. After this, he recommends going to a small stand where Harvey should receive basic equipment for his class. Harvey reflects on how he can't believe the day has finally arrived when he will receive the association's standard equipment. Boris says he is concerned about the decline in the number of awakened tanks and healers, as their numbers were significantly higher 5 years ago. Harvey sips strong coffee and ponders the new information he just learned. Boris sits down next to him, stating that even though the Force Awakened created with the Awakening Stones are filling the ranks, most of them are not tanks. He also says that Awakening Stones are not that easy to get, and special Awakening Stones for creating tanks and healers are incredibly rare. Harvey mentally guesses the next words of his interlocutor, which are that even with the Awakening Stone, there is no 100% guarantee that a person will awaken. Harvey himself was lucky enough in his past life to obtain the stone and awaken, but after that he was wanted as a villain, and he lost the opportunity to register as awakened. Boris falls silent for a moment, then says that he hasn't seen a tank for a long time, and that's why he started talking so much, apologizing to the main character. Harvey rises carefully from the table and says that there is nothing shameful or awkward about it. Boris states that it is the third grade, so he must come on the right day and not be late even an hour, so as not to get into trouble. Immediately after this, he again extends his hand to his interlocutor, saying that the exact time will be sent to him by message tomorrow. Harvey looks at his comrade's outstretched hand in surprise and tries to comprehend the information he just heard. After a few moments, a genuine smile appears on his face. Without thinking twice, he extends his hand to his interlocutor and says that he is looking forward to working together with him. It's evening and Harvey arrives in another area, looking around to make sure he doesn't run into any trouble. After making sure there is no one suspicious around, he calmly walks down the street, holding his equipment in his suitcases. The suitcase, which most likely contains his shield, weighs down his hand pleasantly. After a while, he takes out his phone and calls his friend Denny, after which he asks him if it is convenient for him to talk. Danny says that he would be happy to chat with him, to which the protagonist replies that on the way home he woke up as a tank. This information greatly surprises his friend. He asks him if he is trying to play a prank on him right now. Harvey pauses for a moment to give his answer more seriousness. After a suitable pause, he says that he wouldn't joke about something like that even if he had the chance. After walking a few steps to the coveted door, he slowly opens it, initiating the ringing of the bell that is screwed to it. Looking around once more, he reflects on the fact that he has arrived at the very place where he is supposed to be. Harvey's concentration continues to be at its peak, while his friend continues to chatter about something of his own. Danny claims that they only separated a few hours ago, but Harvey has already managed to wake up like a tank, which is a rarity. After a while, he notices that Harvey is not reacting to his words at all, and comes to the conclusion that the call was cut off. Meanwhile, Harvey carefully examines a small model belonging to a terrible and bloodthirsty monster. Upon closer inspection, he discovers that this model costs an exorbitant amount of money, which makes him wonder who would pay such a price for such garbage. Breaking away from his thoughts, he reassures his friend that the connection was briefly interrupted, after which he says that he went to the association and registered as awakened today. He also reports that in 2 days, he will have a test for a rank 3 tank, stating that observing veteran hunters during the hunt might have helped him. He also asks his friend if he can join them as a porter again, to which Danny replies that he should have seen enough of everything by now. Harvey says he was too focused on carrying his gear to properly observe his commander in action. After a while, he briefly removes the phone from his ears, as he has finally found the item he needs. This item is a rather simple wooden ring, which at first glance does not represent any value. After finishing his conversation with his friend, he approaches the seller and says that he would like to take a bracelet and a bottle of solution. Looking at this artifact, he remembers that this thing was once possessed by Jaden Russell, who had the 3rd rank among all villains. At that very moment, he finds himself in his memories, during which he sometimes talked with this notorious scoundrel. He also recalls that back then, during the time travel period, he was only ranked 8th among all the villains. He also remembers how they were drinking with this man, and on one of those evenings he told them about how he acquired this bracelet and its main functions. While in the store, the seller looks at the main character with undisguised suspicion, trying to understand what his plan is. Harvey muses that the bracelet increases skill effectiveness by 30% when equipped, then asks the vendor what happened. The seller continues to remain silent and stare at the young man, after which he finally can't take it anymore and asks him why he's looking at him like that. The unfazed salesman apologizes for his question, then asks Harvey if he has registered as an awakened person today. Harvey replies that everything is indeed as he suggests, at which point the man suddenly raises his weapon to deliver a powerful blow. Harvey, surprised, tries to raise his hand to defend himself, but the fist suddenly stops a good distance away from him. The seller says that he knew it, and then declares that he too is awakened and has the ability to teleport. Harvey looks at his interlocutor with some surprise, after which he says that this is a rather interesting ability. Without thinking twice, he decides to touch his temporary interlocutor with his fist, thinking that the ability to teleport will be very useful to him. The second salesman also extends his fist to him, saying that his name is Chester, after which he states that he has spatial manipulation abilities. Harvey looks happily at the second salesman, realizing that such an ability would also be very useful to him. One of the sellers says that he overheard Harvey's recent conversation, adding that he seems to be a tank. After this, he states that players of this class are effectively aristocrats among the awakened. Harvey admits that he absolutely did not expect to meet people here who have awakened, and asks them why they work here. Both sellers suddenly respond that this place of work is their main source of income. Harvey asks them if they are serious, to which one of the salesmen states that with so many awakened with support skills, it is quite difficult to find work. Chester, in order to support himself and his family, became the owner of shops selling antiques and accessories for the awakened. Harvey speculates that these honest workers are probably having a tough time in the job market too. One of the sellers hands the main character the solution he asked for, and he responds with sincere gratitude. Immediately after this, he takes them in his hands, thinking that he has now collected all the materials to unseal all the powers of this artifact. Having mixed absolutely everything that is necessary, he receives an activated artifact that will greatly help him fight in difficult battles. Looking at the pulsating artifact, Harvey smiles happily, realizing that now his chances of winning have increased many times over. The system notifies him that he is holding a rank 38 artifact that was created by the owner of the original system. The system also reports that the Twilight Bracelet has been registered as an installed artifact in the system, noting that there are already 16 similar ones registered at this point. Harvey continues to examine the notifications he receives and discovers that the 24-hour bracelet is linked to the user of the second original system and is now fully unlocked. He is very interested in the words that only 101 artifacts were created, which belong to the owner of the original system. After a while, his phone starts buzzing loudly and he finds that Danny is calling him. He admits that the story of the sharp call scared him a little, after which he decides to come closer in order to receive it. And, picking up the phone, he immediately greets his friend, expecting new information from him. Danny says that it took him quite a while to explain his case to his commander. He also says that all these attempts were unsuccessful, since the detachment commanders believe that this is all nonsense and what is happening does not make any sense. Harvey continues to listen to his friend, who reports that the commander said that he would only believe it when he saw it with his own eyes. Harvey, saying that this could be arranged very easily, then turns to the system. Immediately after this, he creates a spatial anomaly, while Danny is supposed to meet them at the 7th gate tomorrow morning. Harvey reaches into the spatial anomaly as his friend continues to ask him if he has forgotten the way there. Harvey says that he understood everything perfectly and will be at the appointed place on time. Immediately after this, he says goodbye to his friend and clutches his shining suitcase tighter in his hand. Morning comes, and instead of childhood, you are transported to the 7th gate of a small town. Harvey approaches his team and greets them sincerely in order to gain additional goodwill from them. Stanford and Danny look at their porter in shock, realizing that he has acquired some good equipment. I want to be really truthful today, because Harvey has gotten some pretty good gear that will keep him alive for a lot longer. Danny looks at his friend in surprise, after which he says that his new outfit suits him very well. Stanford says he can now believe the stunning fact that Harvey woke up like a tank. He also says that Danny outlined the situation in general terms, but he still can't believe that it could happen in just one day. Harvey laughs and says that he himself does not understand how it happened, adding that he woke up yesterday on the way home. Stanford smiles as he hears of a recent dramatic drop in awakening numbers, noting that incidents like these give him renewed faith in the future. Harvey says that tomorrow he will have a test for a third-tier tank, and so he came to watch Stanford command and fight in order to gain experience. Scratching his chin thoughtfully, he says that he is not sure that he can teach anything, after which he notes that he still will not abandon a person in trouble. Immediately after this, he raises his shield a little and says that he can give him just one piece of advice from the point of view of a person who started practicing before him. He then asks Harvey if he knows why he wears this shield, adding that he does not do it because he suddenly woke up as a tank. Stanford says he wears the shield only because it was his choice. After this, he gives a parting word about how when they encounter monsters, there will inevitably come moments when their strength runs out. Looking at the promising newcomer, he states that he must always remember that it is not skills or PowerPoint values that can bring him back to his former state. From the point of view of an experienced tank, the fundamental factor for survival and success of an operation is determination. After listening to philosophical thoughts on how to approach training, the squad heads into the devastated area. In a fairly large area, they discover a giant sleeping bear, which is covered in scales that are usually found on armadillos. Stanford cautiously peeks around the corner and asks his squad if they have identified the prey type and location. The team responds to him that his order was carried out and they confirmed the presence of another drone in the area. Upon hearing this information, Stanford asks his cartographer, Jacob, to check the monster's location again. Hearing this, the young man says that he understood his commander's order perfectly. Immediately after this, he calls up an interactive map in order to mark the exact location of the enemy for his comrades and adjust their attacks. Stanford looks closely at the maps, saying that the monster types have been confirmed and labeled. He also adds that the two red dots that are on the map are F-class monsters called drones that have low attack power. Also, according to Stanford, these monsters do not have high mobility, but in exchange for this, they wear very heavy protection. Danny says that the harder ones could prove to be a serious challenge, and they may well not have the strength to fight them. The squad's archer says that he already feels exhausted, despite the fact that they haven't even started yet, and then asks how long it will take to break through the defense. Another fighter in the squad says that at such a distance, if something happens, even labor will not be able to pose a serious threat. Stanford says that's a possibility, but the prey will be slow-moving and the second group of hunters is one of the most experienced veteran teams on the field. The girl who plays the role of the healer says that if the attack power of the harder team is low, then she will have a rather easy day, which cannot be said about the attacking team. After finishing the briefing, Stanford asks Danny if he has finished setting up the traps, to which he replies that all preparations have been completed. Immediately after this, he turns around and says that he is very glad to hear this, after which he orders Danny and Christopher to follow him, adding that Harvey and Charlotte are staying here. Harvey calmly states that the order is crystal clear to him, and then begins to look around to avoid an ambush. As they get closer to the monster, Harvey begins to reflect on the fact that he has a very bad feeling about this adventure. He also recalls that, despite the very scant details, he remembers that the reasons for the destruction of Danny's team were due to the invasion of another monster. After this, he notes that if the monster had always been his team, they could have easily dealt with it. But for some reason, they all died. Feeling that something is obviously wrong here, he begins to look around tensely in search of the monster lurking in ambush. The dead silence that has reigned in these surroundings continues to unnerve the protagonist, who understands that he cannot let down his guard. Coming close enough to the monster, he turns to Leela and asks her if she is ready to fire. The girl gives a quick affirmative answer, after which the team captain declares that in that case she should shoot right now. Upon hearing permission to fire, a skilled archer immediately releases the bowstring so that the arrow shoots forward. It quickly becomes apparent that this arrow does not have enough lethal power to penetrate the defense of such a creature. However, this outcome of events turns out to be a little surprising for the girl, and she lowers the bow a little lower in annoyance. Immediately after this, she says that she needs to move to the next point to make a better shot. This attack, despite its very minor damage, is enough to awaken the harder one. The formidable creature stands on its paws and looks menacingly at strangers who dared to disturb its peace. Assessing that the monster is about to begin its attack, he gives the command to the attackers to prepare for battle. Danny and Christopher both respond in unison that they heard their commander's order. The giant monster pushes the ground with its hind legs to appear even more terrifying and thus put its opponents to flight. Christopher immediately grabs his bow and fires several quick shots towards the clumsy bear, which presents an easy target. At closer range, the penetrating power of arrows is maintained to a greater extent due to the fact that they do not have time to lose as much speed. This time the monster feels incredible pain and lets out a loud roar, signaling to everyone that a battle is taking place here. Christopher is pleased with his success and says that these shots should weaken their target. Immediately after this, he explodes from the spot and says that he needs to immediately change his position. But Stanford says that he rushed into it. The enraged bear rushes forward in an attempt to deal with the annoying offender who has caused him a lot of problems. Christopher says that he has no particular desire to deal with the bear and just wants to finish it off as quickly as possible and go home. The next moment he fires 3 arrows, which immediately pierce the bear's hand, but do not have any significant effect. In an attempt to hurt Christopher, the bear makes several quick strikes with its paws, but the archer somehow manages to dodge them. Stanford asks his teammate to stop letting the team down, to which he replies with surprise that you're so slow that you can't hit him anyway. However, before he can finish this sentence, the answer shows in practice why premature celebration of one's successes is very harmful. Although it doesn't directly hit Christopher, the attack creates an incredible shockwave that knocks the arrogant archer back. They, having recovered from their own bodies, the fighters crash into a brick wall at great speed. Danny turns towards his comrade and shouts loudly at him, hoping that he survived the attack. Stanford says that the damn Christopher provoked this bear onto her and the obligatory attack, to which Danny replies that now he must engage in battle. At this opportune moment, he easily rises into the air and takes out his dagger, which has much more power than simple arrows. However, the drone's defenses prove too strong for the dagger to penetrate its incredibly tough scales. However, this only makes the bear even angrier, and his eyes begin to glow even brighter. Danny says with annoyance in his voice that this creature has too strong armor, which is quite difficult to penetrate. Meanwhile, the bear decides to ignore the man who is hitting him from behind and turns towards the helpless Christopher. He immediately rushes forward to close the distance between himself and his future victim. Unable to prevent his horrible death, Christopher only tries to cover himself with his hands. Luckily for the emerging archer, he has a great team, including an experienced tank who knows when to engage in combat. Using his unstoppable momentum, he lunges forward to slam his shield straight into his opponent's head, interrupting their attack. The combination of the heavy metal armor that gives Stanford's body incredible strength and the force of his blow do their job, and the huge drone falls to the ground. However, Stanford knows it's too early to celebrate and goes back into a defensive stance to fend off further attacks. The lifeless area around the heroes gradually begins to come to life due to the drone's loud cry attracting attention. The bear quickly rises to his paws and looks menacingly at his offender. Realizing that he now has to change his target, Stanford calls out, ordering Danny and Christopher, saying that he will provoke the monster onto himself and they must not miss the moment. Once at a suitable distance, the experienced tank decides to use the suppression skill to not give the enemy a chance to win. Once Stanford decides to use this skill, a powerful aura appears around him, which attracts the attention of monsters, increasing their aggression to the maximum value. The drone inevitably falls into the range of this skill and immediately begins to look at the tank, grinning menacingly. Stanford realizes that his plan has succeeded and that he has thus managed to provoke his enemy. The bear decides to attack again to deal with the damned scoundrels who dared to disturb him during his precious sleep. Stanford once again anticipates the clumsy bear's attack and raises his shield to fully protect his body. Immediately after this, he decides to counterattack his opponent to stun him for a short time, thereby exposing him to attacks from his allies. Christopher immediately spots a window of opportunity and turns to his ally, telling her that she needs to act now. Lily says that she has taken this information into account, after which she takes out the arrow again and pulls the bowstring properly. Quickly aiming at the bear's most vulnerable spot, she concentrates and fires. This is successful and hits the huge bear's unprotected temple. Despite the predator's enormous size and its apparent inflexibility, this shot turns out to be very effective. Something else begins to shake for a while, then falls to the ground, convulsing. Stanford rushes forward, saying that they need to act as quickly as possible, and orders Danny to launch a long-range attack. Danny, saying that he understood the order perfectly, rushes forward to help his commander. Both heroes rush forward and prepare to deliver a combination attack on the immobilized target. Stanford also makes sure to give commands to his allies, stating that they should not continue to carry basic attacks to the next team. Danny puts distance between himself and the giant monster, saying that just looking at the creature's monstrous back tires him out. Harvey continues to watch the proceedings closely but does not intervene, in order to assess the situation as best he can. Aboard, Charlotte says that if this continues, this will be the end of today's hunt, which will be pretty boring, as always. Harvey asks her what she means, to which the girl replies that the drone is not the most common monster. She notes that only in the case of extreme luck can one encounter one or two monsters once a year. But even this is extremely rare. Harvey asks his interlocutor how many times they have killed these monsters, to which the girl replies that their group has encountered them for the third time in the last 5 months. Immediately after this, she notes her comrade's curiosity and says that he must be eager to learn new knowledge. Harvey immediately apologizes for his persistence, but the girl pulls a special device at him, which she claims should help him. The girl says that this is a measuring device developed by Jeremy Corp, which is called Model 7. Charlotte politely states that if Harvey came here to watch them hunt before receiving his third rank, then he should write it down. She also notes that using this device can provide him with significant support, since analyzing video recordings is easier than trying to reconstruct everything from memory. The program interface immediately informs the main character that the monster has full health and strength indicators, but its shield has been slightly reduced. Charlotte says that this monster has health that is significantly higher than most other monsters, not to mention its monstrous shield. Harvey takes a close look at the situation and says that it could take forever to destroy this shield. Suddenly, Jacob becomes more tense and says that they have a serious problem. Stanford turns to his comrade and asks him what he means, to which he replies that the life signals of 4 members of the second team have disappeared from the map. Tank wonders in shock if this could mean that the group of seasoned veterans was wiped out. Harvey turns around in alarm and asks what the loss of these readings means. Looking around tensely, he suddenly discovers that some movement has begun near one of the abandoned buildings. Gradually, the walls of the giant building begin to crack, giving in under the onslaught of some kind of monster. After some time, the cracks become larger and larger, proclaiming the appearance of a deadly monster. Finally, the concrete gives way completely, leaving a giant hole in the empty building, through which a creepy shadow immediately slips. One of the heroes, in horror, recognizes the creatures that are breaking through this wall and says that praying mantises are approaching them. Harvey realizes that the situation is quickly getting out of control and things are going to get pretty tough now. Jake warns his comrades about this, and Stanford asks him how much time is left before they arrive. The frightened tracker says that most likely these creatures will appear here even earlier than in 2 minutes. Stanford tries to save as many of his comrades as possible, saying that Harvey and Charlotte should leave here and wait somewhere safe. Harvey reflects that his feelings of unease were not in vain, and warned him that things would be dangerous here. Without thinking twice, he grabs Charlotte's hand and tries to pull her away so that she doesn't get hurt. The girl hesitates a little from fear, and the young man tries to sober her up, shouting loudly that they need to leave immediately. Charlotte finally comes back to reality and with a frightened face says that she understood everything. And finally, in order to retreat, Harvey leads his partner straight to Stanford, which causes his sincere surprise. In response to a question from his leader, he says that it is practically impossible to enter at such a distance. If he catches them, he will tear them to shreds. Stanford is surprised by this lack of subordination, saying that he gave the order to retreat. Harvey tries to reason with his commander, stating that retreat is not an option as the mantises will be too fast, and it would still take 30 minutes to deal with the drone. Stanford ponders his comrade's words while Harvey asks him what they would do if the mantis showed up now. With these words, he raises his shield and says that they are almost guaranteed to be destroyed if they do not act anyway. Harvey barely has time to finish his thought when suddenly one of the mantises lands a few dozen meters away from him. His eyes glow red, but Harvey says that in this case they have only one course of action left. The praying mantis immediately detects the most active prey and tries to figure out from which angle to begin the attack. Harvey, meanwhile, is preparing for a very intense battle and states that they need to hold out as long as possible. Harvey and his team were in a real tough spot, as it would be even harder to keep up with such fast creatures in such a densely populated area. Those standing there are simply amazed at the courage of their comrade and ask if he has really gone mad. He also asks him if he is so sure that all awakened tanks are equally strong. The mantis takes a few more steps forward, preparing to launch a lightning attack. Stanford makes a last attempt to reason with his comrade, saying that he is a newbie who hasn't even gone through a virtual battle. However, the mantis's patience quickly runs out, and he delivers a sweeping blow with his claw. The attack hits Harvey's small shield straight on, but he manages to stay on his feet. Danny looks at his friend in fear, but his friend tells him that he will still go to the battlefield after receiving the card, so he doesn't care. While continuing to block the mantis's attacks, he adds that tanks should still take the brunt of the damage, no matter how experienced they are. As an illustration of his determined intentions, he forwarded all attacks in his direction. Having a good window to strike, he wastes not a single moment and immediately stuns his opponent, even if they take a long time. Continuing his triumphant speeches, he talks about the need to learn as much as possible in advance to avoid making mistakes in real fights. Danny rightly reminds his comrade that he is now in a real fight. Harvey points out that this is a pretty hard statement to argue with, and then advises them to worry about something more important. Stanford and Danny look to the side, finding that the drone has slowly come to its senses. Harvey says that if they can't keep this monster in the Russian passage, they will be destroyed immediately. The giant bears demonstrate their uncontrollable fury by swinging their clawed paws again. Stanford realizes they don't have much time to talk, so he immediately raises his shield. Thanks to his massive armor and excellent physical training, he manages to block this attack as well. Having come to his senses, the commander continues to give orders to his comrades, saying that Harvey is speaking the right thoughts. The first thing he recommends is that Christopher support Harvey so that he can buy himself some time. Even after this, he gives the command to Danny to support him in the fight against the drone. However, even such a moment of illumination can be quite expensive. Since the drone is an unusual bear, his physical strength is enough to kick his opponent, something Stanford didn't expect at the moment. Having received a serious blow, he is thrown to the side several meters and falls to the ground. Maintaining incredible composure and presence of mind, Stanford approaches a fighter named Tobias and asks him to use a binding trap on the drone. Tobias immediately responds to his commander that he will carry out his order as quickly as possible. And after thinking for a long time, he takes proper aim and throws a small trinket at the feet of the giant bear. The bear doesn't have time to understand anything, but the trinket opens and heavy steel chains fly out of it. These chains block the giant bear's movement, and he states that they have about 5 minutes. Stanford rises to his feet, thinking about how the drone is right in front of them, while the mantis is coming from behind, blocking all escape routes. He admits that they barely managed to buy time, but the situation is still far from hopeless. He turns his gaze to Harvey and notices how bravely the rookie, who found himself in his first serious fight, is fighting. Christopher continues to try to distract the giant praying mantis in order to make Harvey's life easier. However, the creature's armor is so strong that simple shots cannot penetrate it even from a short distance. Harvey carefully monitors his opponent's aggression level to prevent him from switching to the fragile shooter. To do this, he decides to use a blow, which provokes another fit of rage in the giant insect. However, before the insect can gather the strength to launch another attack, it receives a powerful shot straight to the head. Harvey turns around in surprise as Lilia states that it will be quite difficult to destroy this monster on the first try. Christopher chuckles at his partner and tells her that she just made a great shot. However, for the ability to deal huge amounts of damage, such people pay the price of monsters easily switching to them. Harvey doesn't have time to switch the aggression back to himself, and the giant praying mantis suddenly takes off into the air. Harvey quickly turns towards his friend and advises her to get out of there now, as the mantis has changed its focus. The archer realizes that she has gotten herself into a very bad situation and needs to evacuate immediately. Before she can react in time, the mantis launches a powerful attack at the window she is standing next to. Having been seriously injured, Lily falls to the ground, feeling her wounds begin to bleed immediately. Christopher notices that his ally is in dire trouble and tries to figure out how he can help her. He now realizes that this is another attempt to draw the giant mantis's attention to himself, and sends an arrow towards the enemy. Unfortunately, the arrow's killing power is once again insufficient, and it simply bounces off the giant insect. She watches what is happening and wonders what she should do and how she can help her. Harvey thinks hard about how it will be difficult to provoke this monster because he has been too careless. This carelessness was because he assumed that simply using Shield Strike twice would be enough to keep the monster's focus on him. And after thinking for a long time, he decides to open his statistics in order to make accurate calculations. He is driven by the thought that if he cannot draw the mantis's attention back, his ally may die. Looking at the result, he understands that the risk is quite high, but he still decides to go for it. He uses the suppression skill to create an aura that should provoke the enemy into attacking. Energy currents immediately permeate a small area around the protagonist, which also includes a giant praying mantis. Harvey knows he can only hope and believe that the bracelet's enhancement will work right now. He continues to stare painfully at the mantis and hope that it will stop trying to eat Lily. His efforts prove quite successful, as the mantis suddenly freezes and stops taking any action for a while. Something begins to slowly turn its creepy head towards Harvey and Charlotte. The doctor's nerves give out again, and she begins to repeat in fear that she does not want to die a terrible death. And after thinking for a long time, she turns around and starts to run away quickly, leaving the main character alone with the terrible creature. Harvey turns to look at her, but she immediately disappears around the corner of a small building. However, the protagonist's eyes begin to sparkle as his plan has completely succeeded. A moment later, Stanford contacts him, asking why he hasn't responded, and then recommends that he get out of there. Harvey says he'll be fine and he already has a plan of action. The team captain doesn't understand what Harvey means, and so the protagonist says that he has already returned the monster's focus to himself. He immediately begins to defend himself from the giant mantis's powerful attacks, while the second tank can't believe what he just heard. Meanwhile, Harvey spots a good opportunity to attack us and rushes forward. He constantly thinks that it will be too risky for him to maintain the provocation with basic attacks alone. He also realizes that he tried to avoid using the copied skills, but now he has no choice. In order to at least somehow correct the situation, he decides to use the destructive body skill. At this moment, the praying mantis reaches its victim and decides to deal with it with a quick and precise strike. Harvey continues to dodge these attacks, thinking that he needs to equip the attacker's passive skill. Immediately after that, from his perspective, this should make his base attack comparable in damage to damage-oriented classes. Given another small window of respite, he smiles, thinking that everything should work out for him now. He also begins to feel as if every cell in his body is rapidly awakening. This was the same feeling he had when he awakened as an attack class and became a famous rank 8 villain. This skill is called hyper-perception and is a highly sought-after ability among any warrior. Thanks to this skill, Harvey easily dodges his opponent's subsequent attacks, not forgetting to hit his limbs with his shield. The force of his blow increased so much that even a simple shield attack began to make holes in the giant mantis's armor. At the same time, Lily is trying to get out of the destroyed building and at the same time not attract the attention of other monsters. Each new step is especially difficult for her, as the wounds begin to make themselves known. The arrow she had just been holding in her hand slowly falls to the floor with a characteristic thud. The girl looks sadly at how her strength is leaving her and says that today couldn't possibly be any worse. She quickly realizes that she is losing too much blood and cannot exert any force now. After a moment, her pain gradually subsides as Charlotte, who had previously fled the battlefield, actually went to save the wounded. The girl asks Lily to stop making loud noises, as this could complicate the treatment procedure. Lily points out that Charlotte wasted his time, reminding her that if she has time to heal the archer, it's better to focus on the tank. Charlotte advises her interlocutor not to worry about Harvey, since she cannot treat him unless he loses health. Turning towards the protagonist, she says that this guy is really crazy and adds that he takes all the damage on himself, as if he were the head of their team. Meanwhile, Harvey continues his intense battle with the giant monster, not yielding to it in killing power. Meanwhile, Danny and Stanford hold off the onslaught of the giant drone in order to come to the aid of their comrade as quickly as possible. The giant drone itself begins to feel that its shield is gradually weakening and tries to understand what to do in this difficult situation. Stanford tells Danny that he shouldn't waste time on basic attacks and just bombard him with every skill he has at his disposal. Danny asks his friend what will happen if he attracts the monster's attention again in this way, but he tells him that he will not allow that. At that very moment, the drone raises its huge paws above its head to bring them down on its offenders. The sensor immediately raises its huge shield and says that the attack that it also gave will happen right now. Waiting for the right moment, he makes another attack in order to interrupt his opponent's actions. Immediately after this, he rushes forward, thinking that the binding trap will disappear in just 10 seconds. Without missing a chance to give the right command, he turns to Danny and tells him that he must act right now. Danny lunges forward, rising up onto his stunned opponent who has lost all ability to move. Realizing that every moment counts, he calls upon the system and shouts the name of the critical strike skill. A moment later, lightning strikes the giant creature, causing it to tremble in incredible pain. Danny hopes that the blow is powerful enough, and to his delight, the monster begins to evaporate. Stanford realizes that it is too early to celebrate his victory and tells his comrade that they are done here and must now move on to another monster. Danny takes a few steps forward and sees that the monster left behind several very valuable trophies. He claims that he just picked up a core and a very valuable skill card, which is practically a jackpot. He pulls his ally away, saying that now is not the time to celebrate victory, as they need to help Harvey. At this point, the protagonist continues to fight against an opponent who is superior in size to him and has some success. Noticing his progress, Stanford stares at him in surprise and wonders what the hell is going on. Harvey turns to the side and says that If they are done with their hunt, they should help him fight this monster. Danny reminds his friend that he did a lot of the work himself, and then asks why he wants to share with them. Stanford says that he doesn't see Harvey having any problems with the monster, and then suggests that he finish the beast off himself. Other team members say they have no objections to the proposal. The only fighter who expresses disagreement is Lilia, who says that she is not one to live in debt. After saying these words, she fires several quick shots towards the enemy to help the protagonist deal with him. These attacks hit the mantis directly in the claws, disorienting it for a while. Harvey realizes he must take advantage of this opportunity as quickly as possible and jumps high into the air. Once away from the enemy, he throws the force of his weight and a hard shield at him. The unsuspecting praying mantis falls victim to this deadly technique and falls to the ground. Stanford and Danny, meanwhile, look at what is happening. They cannot believe what they just saw. The team captain says that the friend Danny brought is a much more interesting person than he initially thought. Harvey removes the shield from his opponent's body, then shakes off any excess blood. Stanford asks his comrade if he is sure that this man woke up as a tank and not some attack class. After some time, deep evening sets in, and the team gradually sums up the results of their amazing raid. Stanford orders his squad to gradually prepare for departure so as not to linger in this dangerous place. He adds that he knows very well that everyone is very tired and exhausted, but if they delay, even more monsters will appear. Harvey wants to get his battle score back in order with a rag clean. Danny approaches his comrade and asks him if he used that mysterious skill when he fought the mantis. Harvey looks at his comrade in surprise as he says he is referring to the hyper-perception skill he used every time he had to get up in fights. He explains that otherwise the movement he demonstrated during this battle makes no sense. Deciding not to press his friend further, he asks him how he feels, reminding him that using this ability used to give him a headache. Harvey says he feels absolutely fine, suggesting that the awakening is to blame. He also says that today they should definitely take a walk and go to a cafe to have a good drink. Harvey says that this idea will have to be put on hold because he needs to spend time with his brother and sister today. Stanford decides to voice his suspicions and moves closer to Harvey, after which he asks him about who he really is. He is also interested in how someone who woke up yesterday can fight so effectively and confidently. Harvey says that he is preoccupied with exactly the same thoughts as his comrades. This explanation turns out to be completely unsatisfactory, as the rest of the squad begins to look at him in surprise. In an attempt to at least somehow justify himself, Harvey claims that the situation was a stalemate, so he did it unconsciously by releasing some superhuman power. Stanford takes a few more steps towards Harvey and asks him if he really thinks anyone would believe that. Harvey pauses and realizes that the situation is now escalating by the second, and so he needs to figure out how to explain his behavior. Stanford addresses his comrades, saying that he would like to make a very important announcement. The team captain states that Harvey himself defeated the mantis today, but it has not yet been officially registered as awakened. Stanford, saying that the circumstances were indeed against them and left them with no other choice, but they all know the consequences of fighting before registering. Immediately after this, he suggests to his comrades to keep what happened a secret in order not to set each other and Harvey up. Lily smiles, thus making it clear that she agrees with this proposal and will keep this secret. Christopher and his friends smile and say that there is no need to worry about them, since they are not stupid enough to talk about such things. Harvey approaches Stanford to at least somehow explain himself to him, but Stanford simply thanks him. Harvey looks into his eyes in surprise and tries to understand why he decided to keep his secret a secret. Stanford says that if it weren't for Harvey's help, they would all have been eaten by this formidable monster. He also says that this time Harvey will be included in the profit distribution list. Harvey asks his friend in surprise if this means that everyone else will now get a smaller share because of him. Charlotte points out that this statement is true, and then asks him who would complain about such a distribution. Harvey looks down, a little shyly, and realizes that he owes a lot to this girl. He also says that if anyone on the team has something to say to him, she can let them know, as he is open to any criticism. Charlotte smiles and says that if anyone objects to this decision, she will simply stop treating them. Harvey's phone starts ringing, and he states that he needs to answer the call immediately. Charlotte asks him if his lover is calling him, to which he replies with a smile that it is his younger brother and sister calling. However, as soon as he looks down at his phone, he discovers that he has received a call from the association. Harvey is trying to understand why the association decided to contact him out of time, even though it was not yet time for the test. After some time, he arrives at the association building to meet his recent acquaintance. He gets into the testing room and asks Boris if they decided to postpone his test. The researcher tells him that the hunters who were sent to Thailand are returning today. Harvey asks him how their return is related to his test, to which he replies that high-class monsters appeared in Bangkok a week ago and top hunters were sent there. The researcher also reports that in terms of hunter strength, Korea is probably third in Asia after China and Japan, but Korea has contributed more to this mission than Japan. From Boris's point of view, the association focuses on important news and tries to promote it as much as possible. Harvey glanced up, wondering if this meant the association just wanted to get rid of him as quickly as possible. After thinking for a long time, he turns to Boris and says that he is ready to begin, after which he apologizes to him for such a rush. Immediately after this, he decides to give instructions, stating that the test will be conducted in virtual combat mode, adding that the suit and the shield that he is currently wearing are special equipment. Even as one of the monsters begins to materialize out of nowhere, Harvey remembers that this looks a lot like the simulation room he was in before the rollback. Boris says that the monster the protagonist will be fighting against is an F-Class Zeros. He also reminds him that the workout will last for an hour, and the longer he can hold out, the better. A moment later, he turns around and sees three mysterious people standing in front of him. These people turn out to be the judges of this fight, and Boris asks them if they can begin. The judge, who plays the role of the main one in this trinity, only nods silently so as not to waste time. Boris turns back and looks towards Harvey again, saying that he understood their instructions perfectly. Immediately after this, he turns on the microphones and addresses Harvey, stating that the test begins right now. The monster, generated by virtual space, immediately rushes into battle to destroy its opponent. Harvey easily turns away from the attack of this lumbering monster, questioning whether the top hunters have really come here. Immediately after this, he lowers his weapon towards the enemy and decides that it is time to use a shield strike. Having successfully achieved his goal, he throws the virtual monster away, but it maintains its balance. Harvey muses that if he can use this ability to copy someone regardless of their class, then it would be a jackpot. The giant monster senses a glorious massacre, and a sincere smile, similar to a human one, appears on his face. Harvey picks up on the monster's mood and smiles at him too, showing that he's up for a good fight. The monster breaks away from its place and makes a quick dash forward in order to break the distance between itself and its target. Harvey quickly notes that the monster has heightened senses, which impresses him greatly. Dodging his attack, he reflects on the fact that the average time to hunt this monster is 4 hours. There are results on the third stage of testing. It seems better than on the second. Then, this will not be very good. From his point of view, this will only increase suspicion on the part of the association and may lead to unnecessary attention. Continuing to fight the giant monster, he reflects on the fact that it is necessary to act according to the textbook in order for everything to be transparent. He also makes the decision to simply fill the fight time with necessary maneuvers so as not to overdo it, but not to slow down the pace. After quite a long time, Harvey continues to stand on his feet as if nothing had happened, demonstrating miracles of endurance and stamina. However, Boris, who is watching everything that is happening, reflects on the fact that he sees the same movements throughout the entire test. He also reflects on how it would be an incredible miracle if this person did not fail the test, after which he decides to find out the judge's opinion. However, as soon as he turns around, he notices that this behavior has greatly impressed the judges. The main representative of this trinity says that he cannot believe that today they will witness the birth of a super newcomer after so much time. The woman says that as soon as the monster opens up, Harvey immediately attacks him, and when the time comes, he immediately retreats, maintaining a stable level of aggression. Another man adjusts his glasses and states that the most amazing thing is that the young man deflects the attacks with minimal movement throughout the entire length of the test. Suddenly, the woman turns to her colleagues and says that she doesn't want to upset them, but she urgently needs to step away. With these words, he heads towards the door, carefully walking around his colleagues so as not to cause them any inconvenience. The second man also says that today, judging by everything, he overate at breakfast, so he needs to leave immediately. The man in glasses watches his colleague leave and a smile appears on his face, as he understands perfectly well what this means. Left alone with the research assistant and this amazing spectacle, he is told that Harvey is as agile as if he were a small rat. Since then, he says that continuing this test is rather pointless. Boris turns towards his interlocutor and asks him if he is really so sure of this. The man doesn't answer this rhetorical question and reaches into the inside pocket of his jacket. A moment later, he takes out his phone and says that he needs to step away for a minute. At this point, the woman who is evaluating this match also calls her colleagues and says that the potential of the student they evaluated today is limitless. Another judge, who also lied about his reasons for excommunication, telephones his superiors to report that this man is amazing. On the other side of the line, they ask him what he means, to which he replies that he recently heard from a master that movement, as per the textbook, is the most difficult. Finally, the third judge still watches Harvey for some time and does not find a single reason to find fault with his fighting style. After this, he picks up the phone again and informs his superiors that this man is a manifestation of the textbook. He also says that his verdict is final and irrevocable. He also states that the other two guilds whose representatives showed up for the evaluation may take action if they do not do anything first. He also says that it is necessary to make every possible effort to ensure that others cannot do anything and fail to recruit such a valuable employee. After a while, it ends and Harvey receives an awakened certificate at the reception. The girl tells him that he tried very hard, after which she declares that this awakened card should not be lost. Harvey looks closely at the document, considering what opportunities are now open to him. Meanwhile, the girl says that getting an S-class on the first awakening is really impressive, but Harvey asks her if she thinks it's something bad. The girl says that she meant the exact opposite, since getting a C-class upon awakening is incredibly rare. Harvey looks at his interlocutor and tries to understand whether she's trying to play a joke on him, and is telling him this seriously. Meanwhile, the girl, with an absolutely calm expression on her face, says that usually fighters receive category E or F. Harvey slowly walks away and mentally asks himself why he got such a high rating again, despite the fact that he did nothing special. After this, he smiles because, in any case, the registration problem is now finally solved. He also understands that now all that is left for him to do is to do legal things and live a happy life with his brother and sister. His reflections are experienced by loud cries of the crowd and the appearance of several irresistible personalities. He turns his head to the side and sees police cordoning off an incredible number of people who are trying to get through to several celebrities. Immediately after this, he turns his gaze to these people and recognizes them as the very same hunters who had just arrived from a mission in Thailand. The first member of this legendary trinity is a sorceress named Cecilia, who is ranked second in the national attacker rankings. Second in order among these people is Kevin, who is nevertheless the #1 man in the national offensive rankings. Finally, rounding out the top three is Stuart, who ranks first in the national rankings among all tanks. Harvey recognizes the man and asks why he looks so unhappy. He also understands that this man is famous for his bad people and asks himself what he should do if he talks to him. Harvey realizes he has no choice if he wants to copy his skills and says he must act decisively. With these words, he takes a few steps towards this trinity, who looks at him in surprise. He immediately pretends to be a rather pathetic person and politely greets them, calling himself a fan. He also says that it is a great honor for him to meet them and see his idols in person. Cecilia says that she is very pleased to meet him, and then asks him if he would like her to sign something for him. Harvey politely tells his interlocutor that this is not quite the case, and that he was not addressing her. After this, he talks about how he is a huge fan of Stuart and has always wanted to be like him. Stuart looks at Harvey in surprise and asks him if he is serious. Harvey immediately becomes even more scared, realizing that, apparently, he got into deep trouble and said something wrong, which caused Stuart's anger. Meanwhile, the stern giant bows down to the protagonist and asks him about what he just said. This behavior is so frightening that Harvey is temporarily rendered speechless. Looking closer, he notices a very angry look on the face of his idol. As Stuart gets closer and closer to him, he reflects on how anyone would mistake him for a villain at this point. He also asks himself in fear, did this huge man really want to hit him? Stuart stops after a while and then loudly asks Harvey again about what he just told him. Harvey immediately comes to his senses and timidly says that he told him that he was a fan of his. Stuart immediately turns to his comrades and asks them if they heard about it. Kevin starts to laugh heartily while Cecilia frowns and says that she almost got it. Harvey tries to figure out what the essence of this situation is, not realizing that there is some kind of peculiar relationship between these three. Cecilia says with displeasure that if this monkey had not announced, everything would have been completely different. 30 minutes ago, these three were riding in a limousine, and a very interesting dialogue began between them. Kevin told Stuart that after someone approached him claiming to be a fan of his, Stuart threw him out because he was annoying. Cecilia supports this view, saying that she has not seen anyone else who would call themselves a fan of Stuart. She adds that she hasn't really seen anyone like that, since no one wants to get hit on the head. Cecilia also says that Stuart knows very well that she really doesn't like men who constantly lie. Stuart said he never tried to cheat on her, adding that he is #1 in the entire country and definitely has fans. Cecilia was skeptical of these claims, saying that if even one person showed up as a fan of Stuart before they got to the association, she would agree to have dinner with him. Stewart grinned and asked if she was serious, but the girl immediately added that if no one showed up, she would have to help him once. Stewart looked at his interlocutor in surprise, trying to understand what she wanted from him. Cecilia says that they are planning to hunt a C-class monster in Genesis, and the guild is short of tanks. After this, Cecilia says that the essence of the request is that if he loses the bet, he will have to be the main tank for once. She also says that this service should be provided completely free of charge, out of pure enthusiasm. Now we can imagine the unimaginable happiness that Stewart felt when he found himself in front of his sudden fan. We can also perfectly imagine the indignation that Cecilia began to feel, not expecting that these words would backfire on her. Stewart continues to ask Harvey leading questions and asks him if he is definitely a fan of his. Harvey muses that this all smacks of concentrated schizophrenia and wonders if he should just run away. However, a moment later, Stewart extends his hand to his most devoted fan in order to cement their friendship. Harvey looks at this gesture in surprise and tries to understand what is happening right now. Stewart says he would love to sign something for his fan, but since he doesn't have a pen right now, they can just shake hands. Harvey still doesn't understand what's going on with this man, but nevertheless decides to accept the offer. He quickly shakes hands with his idol and reflects on how the situation is turning out to be more wonderful than ever. Upon touching it, he immediately initiates the ability to copy in order to adopt some of its abilities. Stewart watches Harvey with interest, then asks him his name. Harvey states his name, and the world's #1 tank quickly hands him his business card, telling him to call him if he needs help. Immediately after this, Kevin comes up to him to take a closer look at this man. Harvey looks at the second hunter in surprise and tries to understand what is so surprising about him. Kevin takes a few steps forward and then extends his hand to him, saying his name, to which he replies that he knows his name. Pretending to be an impressed fan, he also shakes his hand, not forgetting to initiate the copying procedure along the way. Kevin says he never would have believed that a national treasure would come out in a place like this. Stewart asks his comrade with feigned irritation if he is really calling his only fan a national treasure. Immediately after this, he gives his friend a friendly hug, saying that they should stop chatting, since the president of the association is waiting for them. Without thinking twice, they head towards the elevator in order to get to the right place without being late. Cecilia walks past Harvey and says that what is happening is starting to irritate him more and more. Harvey takes a few steps towards the young girl, says that he is also a fan of hers, and then asks her if he can shake her hand. He also says that for him it will be an incredible part. But the girl is in no hurry to get up there, to be such a part of him. Without thinking twice, she turns away with displeasure and demonstratively leaves, without saying a word. Harvey looks at her with disappointment and regrets that she did not agree to give him an autograph or at least shake his hand. After this, he understands that this is a special time for sadness and grief, and he needs to return home as quickly as possible. A smile appears on the street as he has just copied some very useful skills. At the same time, somewhere in the American Association of Awakened People, serious movements of information flows begin. One of the high-ranking employees of this corporation asks his colleague what he is watching now. After watching the test recording for some time, he says in surprise that after 3 hours, Harvey had spent only 3% of his life force, which is phenomenal. Immediately after this, he asks his colleague which side this person is from and what his name is. After receiving information that the man is from Korea, he wonders if this is all some kind of scam. The subordinate says that most likely these people do not even suspect that they are being watched, so they are unlikely to be tired of putting on a show. The blonde employee immediately picks up the phone, but he stops him, saying that he should take his time. He adds that it is too early to inform the higher-ups and that further study is needed, but his colleague says that there are very few awakened people of this rank in the entire world. He notes that there are only 5 of them and they all started out as C-rank recruits. The American Awakened Association employee realizes that he really has nothing to say here. At the same time, his more enterprising colleague says that if they waste time, they could lose such a promising person. A few moments later, he contacts the director, saying that he just checked a tank from Korea, which was registered as C-rank. Meanwhile, his colleague still looks at what is happening with a little suspicion. The employee says they still need to confirm some things, but the results they found are simply incredible. He also adds that it is easy to forward this video recording for the director to look at. After some time, the action moves back to Korea, where the main character continues his adventures. Using his portal manipulation skills, he easily overcomes space. He approaches the door in order to go down to his apartment without attracting unnecessary attention. As he walks down the stairs, he reflects on how his passive effects have increased to level 3, significantly increasing his defense and reducing damage taken. He also understands that the added statistical characteristics have increased his evasion and health parameters and decreased elemental damage. I mean, he's transported to the battlefields where the fighters he just copied the skills from were fighting. These fighters are the pride of the country, so they must have fought incredible monsters that can instill horror in any other person. Harvey muses that skills like score upgrade and announcement deal quite a bit of damage. From his point of view, in times of crisis, this could serve him as an excellent trump card that no one expects. After studying the details of these skills, he realizes that thanks to them, he can hit his opponent with a shield and thereby increase the level of aggression towards himself. However, that's not all, because the main character stole skills not only from the #1 tank in this country. Harvey understands that Kevin's unique skills do not have any starts that increase the power of attacks. But this is not their main feature. The main trump card is that this person possessed the Master of Speed skill, which increases the speed of movement by 3 times, while simultaneously increasing other indicators by a significant percentage. He also has a flash skill, which is a real jackpot for a class like a tank. Thanks to this skill, you can instantly take the most advantageous positions and thereby obtain the most beneficial advantages. As if that weren't enough, this skill also grants a boosted first attack after teleportation, dealing 100% critical damage. This attack can catch the enemy and cause massive damage, as no one expects such damage from the tank class. According to the details Harvey learns from the system, teleportation can be carried out to any desired location within a radius of hundreds of meters. This is simply great news for a person who wants to build his life in such a way that his relatives will never be in danger again. He continues down the stairs and praises himself for having hit such an incredible jackpot. He also wistfully muses that if he combines the skills he has copied from other fighters, it will make him the most versatile fighter in the world. Thanks to these characteristics, the main character will now most likely be able to fight alone with medium monsters in the beginner zone. Harvey enters the apartment and slowly looks around, finding it too quiet. This silence begins to have a rather depressing effect on the main character, despite the fact that he understands perfectly well that everything is fine with his relatives. However, he still decides to look around and slowly walks down the corridor. Looking at the packaged fast food, he decides to touch it and realizes that it is very cold. Now his face shows an expression of genuine suspicion, since the children would hardly leave the food untouched. He's thinking about buying it for dinner and wondering why the kids didn't eat it when he hears his sister's voice behind him. Harvey immediately turns around and looks at his sister, trying to figure out why neither of them had eaten. The sister rubs her sleepy eyes and asks him why he came so late, to which he replies that he had something to do. Taking a few more steps forward, he asks her if she hasn't eaten anything today. The sister begins to rub her eyes and says that she thought it would be much better if they ate together. Harvey says that he clearly told them that they should eat first and wait for him to arrive, but the girl continues to insist on her own. She also admits that she didn't really want to eat, and this causes genuine surprise on the protagonist's face. The girl quickly hugs her older brother and says that she dreamed that he would die, and also that he did not answer her calls. Finally, she states that she could not contact him, was incredibly scared, and this took away all her appetite. Harvey hugs his sister and tells her that these are all just bad dreams, since he doesn't plan on dying anytime soon. A few moments later, the brother comes out of his room and stares at the main character in surprise. He also quickly runs up to him and hugs him, saying that they have been waiting for him for a very long time and have already lost all hope of seeing him again. Harvey muses that he should be more careful, as he promised himself that he would treat the boys very well upon his return. Without thinking twice, he agrees to have dinner with his brother and sister, reflecting on how he was unable to take care of them because he was so busy. Sitting down at a small table, he reflects on the fact that this was the reason why he returned to the past and refused to die. Gradually, real night thickens over the city, and the children give in under the pressure of their natural needs. Quite quickly, they lie down in bed and peacefully fall into a deep sleep, which leaves the main character very pleased. Harvey himself goes to his room to develop several photographs that will be of great help to him in the future. A lot of time passes, and the photographs finally arrive in full readiness. Harvey takes out his phone, thinking that he finally got it right. After thinking for a long time, he goes to a special website and says that now he needs to register the product and wait for a buyer to appear. This whole procedure takes some time, and silence reigns in the room. After a while, he looks at the photographs again and reflects that some of these items are too valuable to sell. After touching one of the skill cards, he decides to purchase it in order to learn it forever. Suddenly, the system notifies him that this skill could not be acquired because the user class does not match the skill type. Without thinking twice, he decides to copy the skill using touch. However, The system also informs them that the copying failed because the target is not awakened. Harvey thinks hard and realizes that he doesn't have many options left to acquire this skill. Suddenly, his neurons experience incredible electrical discharges, while the system reports that the creation of a personal core for the user of the original system has been completed. Harvey immediately grabs his head and realizes that it is starting to hurt intensely, and the system continues to bombard him with information. The program windows inform him that the core functional system has been generated along with the essence absorption skill used to grow the core. An incredibly large number of notifications begin to get on the protagonist's nerves, along with a very strange sound. This sound begins to increase in volume with each passing second and gets louder and louder until it reaches its peak. Harvey recalls how a few days ago the system notified him that the kernel creation had been initiated. He didn't pay much attention to it that day, realizing that he had never heard anything like this from his friends. After that, he assumed that he would only understand what was happening when the core generation was finally completed. Obviously, that moment has now arrived, and now Harvey must somehow cope with the changes in his body. This very body responds to the completion of the procedure for creating the core of the system and begins to overflow with unprecedented power. Harvey looks at his hands and reflects on how this feeling reminds him of how it felt when he first woke up. His eyes light up with a very bright fire, and he decides to immediately find out what his body is now capable of. In order to find out, he immediately goes outside and goes to an abandoned area to hunt monsters. In order to get to this area as quickly as possible, he decides to take his car. While he is driving to his destination, he decides to access the system to look up some information. Harvey tries to figure out what the original system is, to which he gets the answer that the original system is divided into two parts, one of which is the power of creation, and the other is the power of copying. Harvey asks the system what a master system or a creation system is, to which he receives the answer that the master system serves as the basis for derivative systems. The program also notifies him that this system exists as a single entity, which distinguishes it from awakening-type systems. Having learned everything he needs, he decides to clarify what a copy master is, to which he receives the answer that a copy master can copy all abilities received by the power of creation. It also follows from this that the copy master has the ability to copy any target, including its life forms, subject to the influence of derivative systems. Harvey realizes that the meaning of these words still eludes him, despite his best efforts to think about it. A few minutes pass, and he finally makes it out onto a small roof that will give him some privacy with his thoughts. Looking around, he discovers that the roof is covered with rubble. However, Harvey is not worried about this and decides to take a little rest in order to regain his spirit. Taking out a bottle of water, he says that this information search function is very useful. Immediately after this, he is immersed in thought about the fact that he unlocked such options only after he generated the system core. Gaining confidence in his own abilities, he loudly orders the system to open the status window. The system immediately executes the command and shows the protagonist that his status window has also undergone significant changes. According to these changes, he received characteristics that he never had before. A smile spreads across the street as he discovers that the option to increase all characteristics was also his father's. After studying his basic characteristics, he immediately decides to study the characteristics of the system core that he just generated. According to the information received, thanks to these glasses, he gains recharge skills, which determine additional power that serves as a backup power source. Taking a closer look at his bracelet, he realizes that thanks to this artifact, it can lead to incredible efficiency. He also reflects that an even more unexpected fact is that all these characteristics are only at the first level. He smiles, understanding that by pumping up his powers, these skills will most likely increase quite quickly, and there will be a chance for new characteristics to appear. His thoughts are interrupted by a terrible howl, which immediately focuses Harvey's attention. He decides not to hesitate for a second and find out who is the source of this wild and eerie scream. Looking closer, he realizes that his initial guess about who was making the scream was correct. At such a late hour and in such a dangerous place, such sounds could only be made by dangerous monsters who are also giants. Harvey decides to plan his attack and immediately opens the map to properly study the area. The living creature scanner informs Harvey that there is not a single living soul near him, other than this monster. An overjoyed Harvey realizes that this is the perfect time and place to test his abilities. Meanwhile, the monster continues to growl, moving its head from side to side in search of some prey. After a while, he freezes for a moment, discovering that in front of him stands a small man who does not pose a serious threat to him. This coincidence of circumstances even surprises the huge monster, who never expected such strange behavior from people. Harvey is indeed acting a little strange and stands absolutely still, as if he is waiting for some command. In reality, this was all a cunning plan, because a few moments later he screams for the system to use the weapon enhancement skill. While the program offers the protagonist a choice of weapons, the monster lets out a menacing roar. He immediately rushes forward to crush the small pawn and finally have a proper lunch. Harvey decides on a weapon and asks the system to summon a longbow. The system immediately carries out his command, and an energy arc appears in his hands. Looking at this weapon, the young man reflects on the fact that he is now beginning to understand why the man whose powers he copied was so powerful. The monster continues to rapidly approach its prey, hoping to crush it in just a few moments. However, the greedy instincts of this stupid monster lead him only to his own grave, since Harvey understands perfectly well how to behave with such monsters. Before the monster can reach him, he shoots energy arrows in his direction. Without giving the enemy a chance to recover from the first blow, he immediately decides to use the skills of rapid fire and critical shot. At the same time, he analyzes his own skills, not realizing that, in addition to the core, everything else has grown to the maximum. The increase in killing power is clearly noticeable in practice, as the giant monster immediately loses all will to fight. After he gives a loud roar, however, nothing can save him from a sad fate. The monster completely loses its balance and freezes for a while to at least somehow regain its concentration. Harvey decides to take advantage of these and rushes forward to prevent the monster from coming to its senses. Running up to the monster, he uses the weapon enhancement command again to deliver another surprise attack. Taking a small leap forward, he asks the system to switch his weapon to a longsword. A smile appears on his face, and he realizes that if he can handle energy weapons so well, then he has completely inherited Roger's abilities. At that very moment, he leaps into the air to get the perfect angle to attack. As Harvey bears down on his opponent, he wonders if this means he has become as strong as he was. Once within melee range, Harvey will immediately unleash a devastating blow. After some time of intense fighting, the monster finally falls to the ground and gives up its spirit. Satisfied that the monster is dead, Harvey decides it's time to take a breather and chuckles a little. He takes out his phone and pauses the stopwatch, confirming that he has defeated the monster in 1 hour and 20 minutes. This outcome does not please Harvey, as he considers that, given that there are other monsters burrowing nearby, this could all lead to disastrous consequences. He decides to reduce the time to destroy the master to 30 minutes when suddenly he feels his phone start buzzing. Looking at the screen, he discovers that someone from the Awakened Association is calling him and decides to pick up the phone immediately. However, he wonders with surprise why the association decided to call him at such a late hour. A few moments later, he answers the call and asks his interlocutor what he needs. On the other end of the line, he is answered by a girl from the reception desk who introduces herself as Stella. The main character is very surprised that he has suddenly become an object of interest for the association. The girl says that she called him just in case he was still awake, and then asks if it was convenient for him to talk. Deciding not to tempt fate, he replies that he can talk, after which the girl immediately informs him that they have received an unexpected letter from the secretary's office. Turning back, Harvey discovers that another monster has appeared in the area and has detected his presence. Stella says that the president of the association himself wanted to meet with him personally. Harvey says that the president wants to hold a meeting today. The girl says that this can be easily arranged, after which she asks him what time is convenient for him, to which she receives the answer that Harvey wanted it. It was worth stating that the president always starts work at 7 a.m., and the main character suggests meeting at that time. Worth surprisedly asks Harvey if he is sure of his words, reminding him that there are only 40 minutes left until this date. Meanwhile, the monsters gradually continue to approach Harvey's location. The young man confidently says that he will be there in half an hour. After hanging up the phone, he turns his gaze to the monster, who is running towards him at incredible speed and making menacing sounds. For the monster, it becomes a matter of honor for his fallen comrade. Harvey realizes that he doesn't have time to fight this monster fairly now and decides to use the stun skill. Something else swings menacingly, but its attack is immediately interrupted by the use of a skill. Harvey decides to act as decisively as possible and uses his flash skill. Having increased his speed and agility to unprecedented heights, he immediately finds himself behind the clumsy monster. He touches his being, and the system asks him if he wishes to copy the skill of a low-class soldier. Harvey responds to the consent system, after which he delivers a very powerful blow to the back of the huge monster's head. A moment later, he lands epically on the ground without taking any damage. The system informs Harvey that the copying has been completed, and he decides to open the subspace. He immediately receives a notification that a high-ranking core has been discovered nearby. Without thinking twice, the protagonist decides to absorb this core in order to raise the level of his own. Indicates that the alien core absorption procedure has been initiated. After just a few moments, the mysterious power and purple color begin to overflow the main character's body. He says that if he raises the core level right now, he can save quite a lot of time. Having decided to completely absorb his valuable trophy, he instantly raises several levels of his core at once. It is obvious what happened to this monster, which, in its recklessness, rushed to attack so strongly. Harvey creates a branch of the Awoken using his power to manipulate space. He takes out his phone and thinks that at this rate he can significantly reduce the time until the second awakening. Looking closely at the screen of his gadget, he realizes that right now he only has 5 minutes left before the meeting starts. However, his body begins to betray him and his stomach rumbles incredibly loudly. Looking around, he comes to the conclusion that he has overdone it and admits to himself that he is dying of hunger. However, punctuality is a rather expensive quality, so he goes to the association building. While he is riding in the elevator, he decides not to waste time and opens the system window to find out what skills he copied from the monsters. In the notification provided on this screen, he discovers that he is now recognized as one of their own by low-class kin of the same race. There is a very important caveat to the description of this ability, which states that it does not apply to high-ranking soldiers. Satisfied, the protagonist exits the elevator and realizes that he can now be in the beginner locations in relative safety. He immediately thinks that this is simply awesome, and he needs to activate this skill every time he goes to fight alone. The assistant to the association president opens the door for him so that he can go see her boss. She looks at him carefully and then says that he can go inside. The president of the association looks closely at his guest and chuckles, saying that he is very glad to meet him. Harvey takes a few steps forward and looks at the association president in surprise, then says in a hesitant voice that he is very glad to meet him. The elderly man advises his interlocutor not to be shy and to sit down in a comfortable chair. He also asks him if he would consider it disrespectful if he spoke to him in a more informal tone. Harvey feels the tension running through his body and says he doesn't see anything wrong with it. The association's president says he admits to being incredibly surprised that Harvey decided to show up to the meeting so early. Harvey says that all of this is due to the fact that he needs to take care of his younger brothers and sister. This information makes the association president fall silent for a moment and carefully assess his interlocutor with his gaze. After some time, he begins to laugh sincerely, which causes confusion in the main character. Afterwards, he says that Harvey is even more entertaining than he expected, noting that young people now have a sense of humor that he can't quite understand. Immediately after this, he becomes much more serious, saying that it is time to get down to business. Harvey looks at his interlocutor with interest, trying to understand what he wants to tell him. The president of the association says that the organization would like to put forward a very advantageous offer to him. He looks at the young man carefully and asks him if he could turn down the offer from foreigners or stay in Korea. Harvey looks at his interlocutor and does not say a word, trying to understand and carefully weigh all the words he just heard. However, after some time, he says that he does not understand what the conversation is about, and reports that he has not received any offers from foreign guilds. The president of the Awakened Association says that according to their sources, several of the largest guilds in the United States are showing interest in recruiting him. Harvey looks at the association president in surprise and asks him if these are really US guilds. The president says it is quite difficult for him to admit this, but apparently their test data was hacked and leaked to the state. Harvey suggests that there was probably some misunderstanding and asks if only the spies know what class he is. The president replies that the spies have definitely found out which class Harvey has awakened within himself. Harvey wonders if the C class is really that impressive, adding that it only woke up once. The president of the association asks Harvey if he knows the class of most people who were able to awaken a second time, adding that, as a rule, they have exactly this class. After this, he throws up his hands and says that, according to this simple logic, he can already be put on par with the majority of people who have gone through a second awakening. Harvey listens to these words very carefully, realizing that now he has even more opportunities to win a place for himself in the sun. Meanwhile, the association president continues his speech, asking his interlocutor to imagine that he will be able to increase his characteristics to the maximum in the second awakening. Harvey muses that the information means that a second awakening will make him capable of matching those awakened for the third time. The older man says that based on the tank's abilities, the association believes that even without reaching max level, Harvey will be a valuable asset. At that very moment, the secretary comes straight up to the main character, and he notices how she is holding a small folder in her hands. The president of the Awakened Association says that they cannot afford to lose such a promising fighter and says that he wants to make him a business proposal. He assures that the initial fee will be 1 billion won and will also completely exempt his team from taxes. He also says that 2 units of A-class equipment will be provided to him free of charge. He hands him a pen and then says that this contract will be valid until his second awakening. He notes that the deal looks very profitable, and all Harvey needs to do is simply sign the contract. He thinks for a while, trying to figure out what he should do in this situation. After this, he looks up at his interlocutor with distrust and says that he listened to his proposal, but he does not quite understand one thing. He asks the president if all this support was just so that he would stay in Korea, and then asks if they announced any additional conditions. The man rises from his chair and praises his interlocutor for his incredible intelligence. He says that the association has other conditions, including a ban on accepting citizenship from the other party during the term of the contract. He also states that he will be prohibited from joining guilds, since he must consult with the association for a mission abroad. Finally, he states that if the association makes a request for a raid, then he is obliged to deal with it first. Harvey says that from all these words he can conclude that no one can stand between him and the association. The president of the association says that if he joins the guild, then when considering any requests, the decision will be made by the management. Therefore, their goals will be the priority, and not his. Harvey asks his interlocutor if there are any other binding points besides those he just heard, only to receive a negative answer. The president says the offer is only valid until he contacts the Americans, but Harvey immediately grabs a pen. He calmly says that he has no need to drag things out like that, and signs his name. The association president asks him if he didn't need time to think about the proposal. Harvey extends his hand to him and tells him that there is nothing to think about. The president says that he really likes Harvey's determination, and then shakes his hand, unaware of what this might lead to. After some time, Harvey and his brother and sister go for a walk. They find themselves in a department store where there is a huge variety of shops. Young children, who have rarely been to such stores, happily run back and forth and look around. There are still a lot of things left in shopping malls that can surprise young children who don't know this life yet. Looking at a clothing store, Harvey's younger brother asks him if he can look around the stores. The protagonist's sister asks her brother not to make noise, because otherwise they might be kicked out of here. But Harvey offers them to choose something to wear. He adds that they can choose absolutely any clothes for themselves, which greatly surprises the young talents. He also informs them that they can choose up to 10 pieces of clothing. Happy children say that in this case they will take absolutely everything that they like. Harvey is lost in thought for a long time, realizing that things have been going in unexpected directions lately. He also realizes that he was very worried that he would get into trouble once the rookie protection period ended. Meanwhile, the little sister chooses a small dress and asks her brother what he thinks about it. Harvey, meanwhile, reflects on the fact that joining the association turned out to be a one-size-fits-all affair, with only a few mandatory clauses. The store employee approaches the children and politely tells them that they cannot touch the clothes on display like that. Harvey, meanwhile, continues to reflect on the fact that he has a whole list of tasks that he absolutely must complete. He approaches the woman and tells her that she doesn't have to worry about this, because he will buy everything that these children have their eye on. Smiling at his interlocutor, he again returns to his thoughts about the fact that he still has no reason to leave Korea anytime soon. His thoughts are suddenly interrupted by a loudspeaker and an alarming voice warning all shoppers that a sudden gate has appeared near the department store. And the alarmed announcer repeats the information that the sudden gates appeared next to the department store and therefore pose a direct threat to all people nearby. Harvey realizes that the situation is developing very quickly and according to the worst-case scenario. A mall employee tries to calm the crowd by telling them that the hunters will be arriving soon and everyone should remain calm. He also asks all other magicians to wait for further instructions, but some people are beginning to doubt this. The girl tries to calm other people down, saying that it is much more dangerous to go outside now, and then suggests that they follow her to a safe zone. The crowd effect immediately begins to work in all its glory. One of the men pushes a woman he doesn't know, saying that he wants to get to a safe place first. Harvey knows there could be a stampede right now and he needs to make a decision as soon as possible. Without thinking twice, he approaches the store employee and asks her if she could take his brother and sister to the shelter. He adds that he wants to check the situation outside, which causes incredible surprise on the face of the woman, who does not understand anything. The protagonist's younger sister asks him if he really needs to go, reminding him that the girl just told him not to go outside. Harvey realizes that the real danger is that there are 5 low-class monsters nearby. He recalls news headlines from his past life and realizes that on that day, monsters were chasing people taking refuge in a department store, causing the building to collapse. The protagonist clenches his fists and realizes that he had no reason to be in the department store back then, so he treated it as someone else's story. He kneels down to talk to his little sister and asks her to take care of her little brother. He understands that there is no guarantee that he will be able to get out safely with his relatives, so he must take responsibility for himself. This solution consists of him stopping to think, knowing that the guild will not make it in time before it is too late. The people outside the department store rush to get into cover at any cost, while more monsters appear behind them. Law enforcement officials are asking people to remain calm and seek refuge in a department store, which has a safe haven. Quite quickly, a crush is created, since such a large number of people cannot behave in such an organized manner. By creating such a massive noise, they only attract giant monsters that might not otherwise notice them. Even a single monster poses a serious threat to civilians, but in this case, 5 monsters appeared. All these monsters are driven by an incredible thirst for blood, which makes them kill everything in their path. People continue to run away, trying to get to a safe place, and wonder what kind of creatures these are. The only person who stands calmly in the crowd and waits for everyone to finally run to safety is Harvey. He looks sternly at the approaching creatures and understands that he has no choice but to buy time and hold out in battle against an enemy that outnumbers him and outnumbers him. The monsters gradually accelerate in order to break the distance between themselves and their victims. After waiting for the monsters to get close enough, he decides to use his subspace manipulation skill. Immediately after this, he switches most of his skills to tank-class specific skills. The monsters sense that there is some unusual person standing in front of them, and they freeze for a while, assessing their opponent. Harvey holds his weapon tightly in his hands and knows that if any of them break through, his brother and sister will be in danger, so he must hold back the onslaught of all the creatures. He also prepares to make the jump and realizes that he needs to deal with all the monsters at once. In order to engage in combat on his own terms, he decides to use his acceleration skill and charges forward. Getting even with one of the monsters, he delivers a powerful blow directly to its leg to reduce its mobility. This attack also causes incredible bouts of aggression in the monster, which helps ensure that the monster's attention is constantly on itself. From the outside, it may seem like a man is running alongside the monsters at lightning speed. In reality, Harvey can move much faster, but for a specific task, he does not need to enhance himself that much. After performing all the necessary attacks to draw the attention of all the monsters, he stops as his body begins to emit smoke. Immediately after this, he begins to carefully examine his opponents in order to react, depending on the changing situation. The monsters are in no hurry to turn their attention to the main character, and he decides to resort to extreme measures. Without thinking twice, he raises his hand up and aggressively addresses the giant monsters to provoke them. This is already enough to finally completely tip the scales of aggression of the monsters to your side. 5 giant monsters rush towards him, creating a real earthquake with their stomping. At the same moment, the squad that was sent on an operation to clear the area of the monsters that had appeared got stuck in a traffic jam. Stuart is unhappy about this, then asks why the hunting vehicle is so slow and wonders why they can't get out of here. The driver tells him that the roads are blocked by cars of those trying to escape what is happening, and the police are working to clear it, but it will take time. Stuart speaks excitedly about how every second can count. After a while, one of the people sitting next to him in the car puts his hand on his shoulder in order to get his attention. As soon as Stuart turns his gaze to his interlocutor, he shows him the phone and says that he wants to see it. Stuart looks closely at the live broadcast of what is happening and sees several monsters at once. He also discovers that these monsters are launching a barrage of attacks at one young man, who manages to block them with his shield. The person broadcasting the live broadcast reports that there is someone in the area fighting 5 monsters alone. The future is just a Tatka. Stuart's interlocutor says that this man is fighting alone against 5 monsters, after which the question is asked about who this man even is. Stuart looks closely at the man's personality, and his mind immediately flashes to Harvey, who introduced himself as his fan. The proud tank says that he knows this person, since he has seen him before. His interlocutor asks him if they had known each other before. I don't believe what's happening. Stuart is incredibly proud to say that this man is a fan of his. This information turns out to be quite unreliable to Stuart's comrade. He takes it for complete nonsense. Stuart says he once returned from Thailand and encountered a fan at the association. Meanwhile, the streamer is loudly saying that he is seriously risking his own life by filming these battles. He also says that if this tank dies, it will face a painful end. which he does not want at all. Star fever immediately starts to hit this guy's head, and he says that he himself is shocked that he is keeping people informed of the tense situation while being on the front lines. Immediately after this, he makes strange gestures and asks viewers to support him in the form of monetary gifts and likes. Stewart carefully reads the comments that are left in favor of or under this broadcast, and one in particular catches his attention. This comment suggests that Stewart would hardly be able to fight 5 monsters at once. This comment has a serious impact on the proud tank, who has never been used to making himself look like a coward. He immediately falls silent and tries to get out of the car, which attracts the attention of his interlocutor. He asks him where he is going, and I remind him that the plug has not yet cleared. The irritated tank says that its priority is declared to be saving people, so it must move out immediately. His comrade tries to stop him, but the ambitious tank doesn't even listen to the words of his close comrade. After several attempts, Stewart's friend falls silent, realizing that he is unlikely to be able to bring him to his senses. The rest of the squad members, who had been in the car the whole time, get out and immediately say that in that case they are also going. Finally, they apologize to the manager, who was with them in the car the whole time. He looks into their eyes in surprise and is left wondering if they are also so easily provoked. One after another, looking carefully at the horizon, trying to leave the next plan of action. Stewart turns to his manager and asks him to dig up some information on this new guy they just watched. The man says that he doesn't even know the man's name, but he immediately tells him that the young man's name is Harvey. The formidable tank turns to his squad and asks them if they are ready to rush into battle. Heroes with confident faces indicate that they are always ready to stand up for the weak. Stewart commands his comrades to rush forward and come to the aid of the newcomer in need of rescue as quickly as possible. Without thinking twice, they rush towards the carnage so as not to hinder the movement of the crowd. Meanwhile, Harvey continues to fight with some pretty dangerous monsters. Despite this, his outstanding speed stats help him avoid a huge amount of damage. These monsters deal area damage, so they don't necessarily have to hit Harvey directly, as the shockwave will do the trick anyway. Harvey tries to quickly get to his feet and realizes that as time goes on, it becomes more and more difficult for him to fight them. The monsters, however, continue to attack him with increasing frequency, and the protagonist begins to hope that someone can help him and distract at least one. In order to continue the battle against superior enemy forces, he uses the hyper-perception skill. His reaction speed instantly increases, and he once again easily dodges the powerful blows of giant monsters. Harvey also reflects on how it's unlikely that anyone will stand up for him, as that would require them to go crazy and want to die. Realizing his less-than-ideal situation, Harvey nevertheless does not allow himself to give up and prepares to continue the fight. Several brilliant ideas come to mind, and he again rushes towards his opponents. At the last moment, he makes a sharp turn in order to perform a clever maneuver that can buy a little more time. One of the monsters does not have time to react to his movement and freezes in place for a while. He lowers his head in surprise, trying to find the location of his victim by smell. Harvey smiles, realizing that he has managed to lure the giant monster into a trap. However, things don't turn out so cheerfully as the monster quickly finds its target. Harvey looks at his opponent in surprise, realizing that he never expected this outcome. The monster raises its giant paw to crush the pathetic bug that has been causing it trouble for so long. A moment later, Stewart appears behind him, contacting his team and telling them that he has arrived on site. Once he has chosen a target, he will immediately use a stun skill to interrupt their attack. This blow turns out to be incredibly powerful and immediately damages the giant creature's leg. After receiving serious damage, the monster takes a few steps back and stops its attack. Harvey looks in surprise at the man who came to his aid, realizing that it was Stewart. Once he arrives at the scene, he immediately begins to communicate with his fellow soldiers via radio and give them orders. He also adds that it is necessary to check on the remaining survivors and prepare for any unforeseen situations. After this, he turns towards Harvey and asks his medic to come here to treat the young hero. Harvey sits down on the ground and asks his rescuers why they came so late, noting that he almost died. Stewart notes with a smile that if Harvey still has the strength to scream so cheerfully, then it means he can handle 2 more monsters. He invites him to join the battle once he is fully healed. The squad's medic immediately casts a healing spell on the protagonist, but he declares that this is too much. Stewart picks up Harvey's shield and says that instead of wasting time, he should join the fight and finish the hunt as quickly as possible. With these words, he looks closely at the main character and says that he already knows perfectly well how everything works. Just in case, he pronounces the truism that the longer the battle drags on, the greater the damage will be. Harvey realizes that there is some sense in these words and falls silent for a moment. The enraged monster gradually begins to come to its senses, which attracts Stuart's attention. Harvey takes the shield in his hands and clicks his tongue in irritation, realizing that he will have to tinker with this monster for a long time. Rising to his feet, he says that at least now it will be a little easier. One of the monsters spots our heroes and immediately rushes into attack to get revenge for his stunned ally. Meanwhile, the action briefly moves to a safe haven, where there are a large number of people. They hear the voice of a news anchor saying that they are continuing to monitor what is happening. The news also reported that the guild's hunters have been fighting on the spot for about 3 hours, and so far not a single monster has been defeated. Harvey's younger sister listens with despair to the information that these fighters are fighting a truly desperate fight. A store employee asks a little girl how she feels, to which the girl replies that she is scared. Her brother tells her that she shouldn't worry because she just needs to wait a little bit and their brother will defeat these monsters. A worried girl asks him if everything will be okay with her older brother because someone replies that he is a tank, so everything will be fine. Their conversation is interrupted by a loud announcement from the announcer that, based on updated information, one of the monsters has finally been defeated. People who listen to the news on their phones raise their hands in joy. The newscaster continues to cheer on the fighting heroes, saying that their risk has finally paid off. Harvey's younger brother gets to his feet and takes a few steps towards the people watching the news, saying that he wants to see it too. The store worker says it's pretty dangerous to walk around, but he says he just needs to quickly check his phone. The girl tries to stop him, but the boy continues to walk in the given direction, not paying attention to her. Meanwhile, the announcer says that while this news was being delivered, another monster was destroyed, and now only 3 monsters remain. Those who add messages of support from all over the world from viewers watching this broadcast. The men watching the broadcast say that they were confident that this guild would deal with the monsters and then turn their attention to Harvey. They note that this man held off 5 monsters for almost an hour on his own. Harvey's younger brother approaches the 2 men and tells them that the man is his relative. They look at him in surprise, while the young man declares that this man is his brother. This battle drags on for quite a long time, and night falls over the city. One of the guild members continues to fight and quickly changes positions to prevent the monsters from cornering him. The young man also holds something in his hands that marks him as another tank who has moved forward to help Harvey. After stunning the monster, he jumps up to prepare for the finishing blow. Several sharp blades suddenly appear on his shield, which can cut through anything. With one precise and deadly blow, he takes life. Landing softly on his feet, he reports to his comrades that this was the last monster and the 7-hour hunt was finally over. Harvey wipes the sweat from his chin and realizes he can finally rest. A moment later, he falls to the asphalt, saying that he feels like he's going to die right now. Stuart tells him that he tried hard, but he capriciously replies that he just wants to pass out and sleep. Stuart ignores these words and says that he doubted him, but it really turned out to be him. Harvey asks him what he means, to which Stuart replies that Harvey was the one who awakened for the first time and received the highest possible class by unanimous decision. Harvey quickly rises from his prone position to listen carefully to his comrade. Stuart looks him over carefully and asks him if he really is the unusual one. There is a pause between them, as the protagonist has no idea what it is. In order to avoid misunderstanding, Harvey decides to ask his interlocutor what he means. After just a few moments, he hears the joyful voice of his relatives behind him and turns towards them. With these people also came a huge crowd, which can finally breathe a sigh of relief, feeling safe. Harvey happily shouts out the names of his brother and sister before turning fully towards them. As the little children run towards him, he asks them if they are okay and if they have received any injuries. Harvey's younger brother hugs him and his sister and tells him that they were okay and he was protecting his little sister. The joyful young man says that his brother is a great guy, after which he feels an unprecedented surge of positive emotions. Stuart is contacted by one of his comrades who says that he has dug up information on this man. Stuart continues to look at Harvey and realizes that his brother and sister are very important people to him. And after thinking for a long time, he answers his comrade and tells him to forget about this idea. His interlocutor, not understanding, asks him what happened, to which he replies that there is no longer any need to find out anything. Harvey tells his brother and sister that as soon as they get home, they should order chicken for dinner. The protagonist's younger brother says that he is very happy with this idea, but the girl replies that she wants a pig's stomach. Harvey smiles and says that he can afford to have both. After a while, he hears a female voice behind him and decides to turn around immediately. Turning around, he sees a store worker standing in front of him, thanking him for his hard work, adding that if it weren't for him, she would have died along with her colleagues. Harvey says that he should thank her for looking after his relatives. Deciding to stop throwing thanks, the girl simply approaches the main character and hugs him. Tears appear in her eyes and she says that she is truly very grateful to him for this. Harvey doesn't say anything back to her and just stands there, his face starting to turn slightly red from embarrassment. A moment later, a huge crowd notices his presence, saying that this is the guy from the news. They start talking about how this man is incredibly beautiful and talented, since he was able to last so long against 5 monsters. Each person in this crowd tries to hug the main character, thereby absorbing him into a sea of human arms. Harvey wonders what's going on and how these people know his name. After some time, the scene moves to the Association of the Awakened. The president of the association watches the news that yesterday in the city center, just one tank held off 5 monsters for about an hour. The announcer also states that the man, who awakened for the first time just a few days ago, has already reached such unprecedented heights. Harvey is also present in the association president's office and is watching this report closely. Older men smile as they talk about how being a celebrity is incredibly hard, backbreaking work. Harvey talks about being some kind of celebrity and asks the president of the association to stop making fun of him. In general, she says that she will have to deal with the unexpected fame of these gates on the spot. Harvey says this is indeed the case, noting that he has been bombarded with calls from people trying to recruit him since the morning. The president of the association says that the association is with these calls, after which he suggests calling him at any time if problems arise. Harvey asks the association president why he invited him, to which he replies that it is actually the state and others who are saying that he should be registered as special. He adds that the special ones are those who break the accepted class rules with something extraordinary. From his point of view, this does not necessarily mean that they are stronger than the S-class, and they should be thought of as mutants. He also says that unlike the others, there is no legal requirement for these people to register, and Harvey asks his interlocutor if this means he does not need to register. The association's president says that this is not at all necessary, but if he makes such a decision, he will receive significant support from the state. Harvey notes that he has heard that such registration requires a trip to the United States, to which the president responds that this is indeed the case, and the process itself is incredibly rigorous. He also informs the protagonist that many people applied to register as special, but only 3 were registered. Harvey says he can't leave sooner because of his relatives, but he suggests they leave it for now, stating that they have decided to increase the level of support they provide him. Harvey looks at his interlocutor in surprise and asks him why this was done, reminding him that the contract had already been signed. The association's president says the contract was originally written with a promising newcomer in mind, but now the terms have changed because Harvey is special. The president also says that even if Harvey is not special, he deserves better treatment for his exploits. After that, he says that according to the new conditions, the amount of high-class equipment will be increased from 2 to 5, and he will also receive a first-class car. Harvey says that if support has increased, then the conditions must become much stricter. But the president says that is not the case. Harvey scratches his cheek thoughtfully, wondering if it's really that simple. The president looks at him and asks if there is anything that does not suit him, to which he replies that he is more than satisfied with these conditions. Immediately after this, he says that he would like to talk about the car. He immediately asks if he can have the car today. Within a few hours, he is driving around the city in a new car, which offers more favorable conditions. He also decides to use Stuart's business card, which he received some time ago. Stuart asks Harvey who is calling him, to which he introduces himself by his real name. The name means nothing to Stuart, so Harvey introduces himself as his biggest and only fan. Stuart laughs heartily after this joke and asks Harvey what kind of help he needs, to which he replies that he would like to meet him. Stuart says that he can meet at any time, to which Harvey says that they can meet right now, opening up subspace. Stuart asks him in surprise what he means, to which he replies that it won't take him more than 10 minutes to get there. Stuart tries to figure out what the problem is and asks Harvey what he means. Harvey remembers the moment when he was looking at skill cards and deciding whether to sell them or not. At that time, he acquired the skill Mountain Split, so that it would help him in future battles. However, the system prohibited him from acquiring this skill because the user class does not match the skill type. With this skill in hand, he says that this whole incident with the gate could have diverted all attention from Stuart to him. Stuart asks him what this should change, to which he replies that he has prepared a small gift for his idol. Stuart asks Harvey what he means and is told that it is not just a gift, but a tank skill card called Mountain Cleave. Stuart, dumbfounded, asks Harvey if he means the legendary skill that only has 9 copies worldwide. Harvey talks about how it's a tank skill that, depending on how you use it, can deal more damage than an attack skill. Harvey says that he felt it would be better if the low-level First Awakened would use the #1 tank in Korea instead. Stuart says this is some kind of nonsense, since he is being offered the most coveted tank skill purely out of fan loyalty. Harvey says that the answer is that he only wants to ask for one favor. He states that once Stuart has mastered this skill, they should shake hands as a sign of respect for each other. The action moves to the headquarters, where Stuart is currently located. Harvey sits down in a chair and sits opposite Stuart and his friend, who also happens to be the manager. And after thinking for a long time, he takes a card out of his pocket and puts it on the table so that they all can look at it. Stuart looks at this skill in surprise and says that this card is indeed real. Harvey, saying that the value of this card is simply incredible, and if you put it up for auction, you can get rich for 10 lives. The manager says that this is the most surprising factor, that Harvey for some reason does not want to sell this card and gives it to him. A suspicious expression appears on his face, and he asks if they are really driven by fanatical feelings. Harvey points out that only the seller can decide what to do with the item, reminding them that they cannot use the card anyway. Without thinking twice, he says that it would be better to give it to someone he admires than to sell it to someone he doesn't even know. The manager looks at Harvey in surprise and asks him why he can't use this skill. Harvey says that he is the First Awakened, so he cannot use such powerful skills that are not his specialty. Stuart asks his manager how much free cash they have right now, to which he is told that they have exactly 20 billion. Stuart asks Harvey if he only accepts cash, saying he has items to trade. Harvey asks his interlocutor if he means exchanging some equipment or other material goods. After some time, they approach a huge mansion which could be worth several tens of billions. Harvey asks Stuart if he really wants to give him the building in exchange for the card. The manager says that he owns several buildings purchased for investment purposes, and this is one of them. Harvey wonders in his mind how it all came to be that he owned an entire building. Stuart takes a few steps towards Harvey and calls his name to get his attention. A genuine smile appears on his face and he asks him if he likes the gift he received. Harvey looks at his interlocutor in surprise and says that it is impossible not to like such a gift. Stuart extends his hand and says, "That's what they agreed on," and Harvey hands him the skill card. Stuart decides not to waste time and immediately masters the skill of Mountain Split, which causes incredible joy in the main character. His body immediately begins to glow with a strange energy, slightly bluish in color. Harvey is probably watching this, realizing that this skill will now likely be copied with incredible ease. The system notifies the #1 tank in Korea that he has successfully learned the skill and can check it in a special window. Harvey extends his hand to his comrade and says that he is now the only tank in Asia who knows this skill. He adds that now his position in this top will certainly rise by several points. Stuart shakes the hand of his devoted fan and says that the crowds mean nothing to him, as the skill he has acquired is a far greater reward. He also says that Harvey should be congratulated on becoming the owner of the building at such a young age, and then asks him what his future plans are. Harvey says that he doesn't have any serious plans yet, and he just wanted to start working as a mercenary, as he originally intended. Harvey states that he currently prioritizes regular hunts in the beginner zone, and plans to only take on lower-class quests. Stuart reminds them that he now has a building and a huge amount of money, so he doesn't have to work as a mercenary, but Harvey disagrees. He talks about how the world is unpredictable and he has a younger brother and sister to take care of. He also states that after the losses during the Great Disaster, hard times came, and as a result, his youth was a nightmare. Looking at the huge building, he confidently says that he does not want the future of his brother and sister to turn into the same nightmare. He states that he wants to give them life, freedom from financial hardship, and a life filled with freedom and hope. Stuart is very impressed by such a motivational speech from the main character, and falls silent for a while. However, there is no optimism on his face, and he says that a life full of hope is hardly possible in the current times. Harvey turns his head towards his interlocutor in surprise and asks him what he means. Stuart says that the Great Disaster is just the beginning, and the world is gradually moving towards destruction as the frequency of sudden gates increases day by day. He also talks about how, in addition to the increasing frequency of monsters appearing, they now have to deal with villains as well. Stuart says that there has been a recent spate of hunter murders in the Gangnam area, and the suspect is said to be a well-known villain. Stuart confidently states that the man's name is Robin, and Harvey notes that the name sounds familiar. Stuart talks about how hard it is for him to deal with monsters, but now he also has to fight people. He adds that perhaps what Harvey's siblings really need isn't something like buildings, but a peaceful sky above without monsters and people like them. Meanwhile, the scene moves to an abandoned construction site late at night. One of the hunters turns out to have previously wondered when he last contacted the association. Robin emerges from the shadows and says that his victim is fighting back so cutely, but he has no chance of escape. The hunter asks Robin what he is doing here, reminding him that he was hunting in another area. Robin says that no one has ever seen villains who stay in one place because they come and go wherever they please. The hunter understands that he will not be saved, and he has no chance to get out of this trap. The villain asks his victim why his comrades were so heartless and abandoned the wounded commander without even looking back. In a desperate attempt to defeat his opponent, he lunges at him with a knife and tells him to shut up. Robin easily turns around from this attack and grabs the victim by the neck. Pressing her to himself, he delivers several powerful blows with a knife. Immediately after this, the victim falls to the ground, realizing that he no longer has any strength left. Robin says that if his victim had not asked for help, he would have stayed here longer and not rushed, but now he will have to finish everything faster. Finally, he asks his victim if he knows Harvey, reminding him that the man was in the news a few days ago. The fighter begins to scream loudly and send an incredible number of curses at his killer. Robin says that if his victim doesn't know anything, then he should die as quickly as possible, not waste his time. He also adds that he would still have killed him even if he had received the correct answer to his question. Immediately after, he slowly rises to his feet, feeling blood dripping down his hoodie. Without thinking twice, he heads home, taking out his phone to check the news again. Looking at the loud headlines, he realizes that he hasn't had a suitable toy to play with for a long time. For some time, he thinks about what plan of action he should take to track down this man. A few seconds pass and he gives the video a bloody like, so he sets himself a new target, and Harvey is about to face some very tough times. Attacks of madness consume this sick man, and he begins to laugh sincerely like a madman.